In this episode of the Grow Sanctuary podcast, I interviewed Matt Blackburn. Now, Matt is someone who has a lot of good information on many different aspects of health, which makes it a little bit difficult for a podcast like this to decide what topics to cover, because obviously you can't cover everything. What we ended up going over was briefly his background and his health journey up until this point. Then we went into the topic of water quality, spring water versus filtered water, those sorts of things. Then we went into environmental pollution, which is a really important topic that's very underrated in the quote-unquote health community. Not enough people talking about that, all the different types of pollution out there that we're exposed to. Obviously, it's context dependent somewhat, depending on which part of the world you're in, but that's a really important topic. And then the bulk of the interview's on the Clf Protocol, which is calcification, lipofuscin, fibrosis. And we spend especially long on lipofuscin because, well, I just find that topic especially fascinating and also very underrated in the health community. And we also go over a couple of Matt's sort of health experiments, like he's, from what I understand, building a bathtub out of special materials, special rocks. And we finish off with a Q&A, some questions from my Instagram audience. So it was a really fun episode to record. I enjoyed talking with him. It's very informative. And yeah, that's a brief summary of what we went over. Enjoy the podcast. Hello, Matt, and welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on. I'm super excited.
Awesome. All right. So I think just to get started, because we've got a lot to go through, I don't know if we're going to get all of it done, but it's probably good for the beginner just to quickly go through your background in terms of the massive variety of diets and water protocols and these different health methodologies that you've been experimenting with for, like, I think over 10 years.
Yeah. So back in 2005, I was taking a keto class in high school, and I had a really interesting sensei that he was pretty much atheist, kind of like stoner atheist dude, really interesting. But he pointed me to some documentaries, namely Zeitgeist, which is really popular. And that pretty much, quote unquote, breaks down, quote unquote, religion for like the first 20 minutes. And being raised Catholic, that just destroyed my perception. And I was lost for several years. And so that kickstarted a journey of searching and seeking. And for pretty much 5 years until 2010, I was just 100% researching what you would call conspiracy theories. And then in 2010, I found green vegetable juicing and raw veganism on YouTube and just went completely into that. I'd been vegetarian for 5 years prior. And so I did another 3 years of completely no meat. Like, I never cheated once, like a lot of people do. I had no meat at all for 8 years straight. And I was just always open. And so I was researching all the gurus that people, fall for on YouTube and they see on stage speaking and going to these conferences. And I feel like it's kind of like a rite of passage for someone that's learning on their own, as I was. And I got into the magnetism stuff. I started grounding. I remember when I was living with my parents, they thought I was nuts, but my dad crawled under the house and I put the grounding rod through. This was back in, like, I think 2010. And I was just grounding direct rod to earth because I could tangibly feel the difference versus going in the wall, the third prong in the wall, which, you're picking up, as I'm sure, all sorts of dirty electricity and stuff. And so just a lot of trial and error. And I really started my recovery, I would say, in around 2013 when I ate a bison burger. And it was just a homemade. I just bought some bison, put it in a burger, took a bite, and just light bulbs started going off in my head. And then I started integrating healthy animal foods, because I was indoctrinated, like a lot of game changer vegans are, that all animal foods are bad. But a lot of these people don't understand that it's really the small farmers that are under attack, the homesteaders, the backyard farmers. I've had hens and chickens and bees, and that's really the future, is these small farms. And those are basically, these giant mega corporations are hijacking this movement and getting all of these vegans to attack the small farms. They're even breaking onto people's property and stealing animals, and it's just getting really insane. And to me, it really goes back to mental retardation, as you hear me talk about a lot. And I really think that's not an understatement, and it's not a rude thing to say. It's just reality, that we're dealing with people on this planet, most people, that aren't functional at a mental level. And so they're making wrong decisions at every level, whether it be cheating on their spouse, or just doing crazy lifestyle things, doing a lot of psychedelics, or not eating the primary fuel of the body, like carbohydrates. They're going keto, or they're restricting animal protein, and all of these things damage the brain. And so that's a lot of what I educate about now, because I've been through it. I definitely got into health because I had brain fog and a little bit of skin issues, but mainly I was just tired of the fog. And I feel like I've been breaking through that over the years, just with proper nutrition, and primarily animal nutrition.
Awesome. Yeah. There's a few things from there that I wanted to mention. That you mentioned, like the rite of passage of being sort of falling for different diets and fads that you see on YouTube, and that's so true. And I'm grateful for people like you, because I've been able to skip some of those things, from you and from watching other people. And if you pick the right people to look up to and look and listen to, you can avoid a lot of those traps. And so I'm grateful for that. And the other thing is, you mentioned how the whole dairy, animal foods bad thing, and because you hear vegans and stuff, they'll say, "Oh, it's all just big dairy, big agriculture propaganda." It's like, those people milking their 4 goats, they don't have billboards. There's no propaganda from them, like it's trying to sell their raw goat's milk. Where's the big dairy in that? They don't get there's a huge continuum, and there's good, middle, bad, etc. But then, so obviously from then on, you switched a bit more with vegetarianism again.
Yeah, I went back and forth mainly for spiritual reasons, which is why I've kind of integrated Christianity into my message recently, within the last, I would say, year, because I feel like it's a big missing piece to health. And I wouldn't have thought that before. I thought it was just a trap. And I'm not like an evangelist or anything. I just like to point people to that as a potential to at least look into it. But the reason why I went back and forth for so many times, from meat eating to not, is purely for ethical / spiritual reasons. And I think that there's all of my friends that are on the biophotonic diet, or that are, fruitarian, a lot of those people, with the exception of my friend Raw Matt, are not Christian. And you'll notice that with them. They have kind of a lot of new age, kind of Blavatsky based, basically lifestyle philosophies, that's how they live their life. And so that actually influences what they eat. And it gets a little deeper, because I know firsthand a lot of these people selling, for example, liposomal vegan B12 sprays are eating meat themselves. And so it's very well known, once you get deep into the health community, that there are these kind of like snakes, shysters, snake oil salesmen that are integrated throughout, that are pretending to be something that they're not. And then they have all these people that are promoting their stuff and giving it to babies and pregnant women, when it's actually harming them. So
Yeah, like when you mentioned the snakes thing there, it's I haven't really used that term as much, but I definitely notice, and we're going to be sharing a lot of good information in this podcast, but just on that point, just a little bit of a speculation, I do feel like there is a sort of quote unquote, I don't know what you'd call it, controlled opposition or controlled something in the natural health arena where there's people like, we already know now that high quality animal foods are healthy. Like, that's been known for ages. And so it's kind of unacceptable if you're a guru out there still promoting the opposite of that, and if you're still, not talking about EMF at all, for example. There's people like that as well. And so, yeah, I definitely think there's people out there. I don't know what the thing is, if it's just they just want to make more money because they worry that if they talk about a controversial topic, they'll get less Instagram followers. I don't know what their theory is going on behind the scenes, but there's definitely an area of the community like that, for sure.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are unaware of that. And so when you're unaware of something, it makes you vulnerable, right? Like whenever I'm down in Southern California, I'll point it out to friends or family, like, do you see the spraying in the sky? Like, is it really this bad? And a lot of what I get back is just glossy-eyed stares. Like, they never look up. They never like think about like, wow, I'm breathing these nanoparticles. What are the effects of that? Like, what is this doing to my health? And just that kind of awareness is not there, So
yeah, with the thing you're just referring to, that not mention people, if people choose not to mention that, I'm a little bit more sympathetic for that, because then they're trying to potentially be more, they're trying to be mainstream, and they're trying to get to a bigger audience. But I get your point. But like, yeah, people not talking about the meat, healthy meat, and EMF and blue light and stuff, it's pretty unacceptable.
Yeah, because if you have animal protein, you could take care of geoengineering spraying or all these things. The solution is not a liposomal detox spray. It's actually to support your liver with animal protein, because the liver needs glycogen and animal protein and choline and vitamin E and all of these things. It's our primary organ of detoxification. And so, yeah, I think people are spinning their wheels where they're pointing at chemtrails and pointing at all these things, and then saying, don't eat animal foods. It's like, it's so ridiculous.
Yeah, it's like the continuum where you've got people, well, it's not really a continuum because there's not many people in the middle, but you've got a group of people which are all about these sprays and these sorts of things, and some of them are shady, some of them are just maybe misinformed or focusing on the wrong things, and then you've got the whole like Whole Foods people on the other end, where they're not going to acknowledge anything, like even just magnesium chloride spray on the calf. Like, come on. And then so I try to be, and I know you are as well, like in the middle where we can take advantage of both and use them as we see fit.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think it's really, as we spoke about before the call, it's focusing on the right things and understanding what the problem is, which is why I made the Clf Protocol over many years. And that's the closest thing I've made to a book so far. It's just a blog post outlining my basic protocol that I recommend for everybody. And I mean everybody, because people that do consultations with clients think that everything's bio-individuality and everybody's different. But what I always say is that we're all living on planet Earth. Unless you're on the moon, or unless you're on Mars, or unless you're in like the biodome, then you're exposed to all the same toxins of everyone on planet Earth. I mean, the whole planet has a smoke ring around it. We're all dealing with acid rain. We're all dealing with NPK fertilizer, excess iron in the vegetables, in the water, the non-native EMF, as you speak about. That's like a ubiquitous, every single person kind of deal. And so there's no bio-individuality there. We all need the same mitigation.
Yeah, I think like, I can't remember what source of contamination it was, but I was reading a book recently, and they said that they found this source of pollution that you wouldn't think is in Antarctica, but they found it in the ice there, which is obviously adding to the point that it goes everywhere. Like once it's in that hydrological, geological cycle, it spreads, and unfortunately, like you say, it is everywhere. And yeah, it is. I mean, there's probably an element of bio individuality or like personalized approach, but it's like, what I say to those people is, who has thousands and upper hundreds of dollars to go and do all these tests, do these consultations with these people that probably deserve the money because they're very, very intelligent. I'm not challenging that. They deserve the money, but like people don't have that money. So this, oh yeah, everyone should have a personalized approach. No, it's just not feasible at all. And it's not going to be for the foreseeable future. And so that's why I have no problem with, an intelligent, broad spectrum, foundational approach. I mean, people could just, they could do your protocol and maybe tweak it to them, or not do a third of it, or whatever, but there's nothing wrong with sharing advice that would be applicable to everyone. I don't get why people get all up in arms about that.
Yeah, and when you read my protocol, I say basically what the problem is and then what I think is the solution is. And part of it's, there's red light therapy in there. There's different lifestyle things that, kind of limiting ultraviolet light from the sun, different things like that. But it's, like you said, you can add in what you can. A lot of people, my Dissolve It All, they're kind of pricey. They're systemic enzymes. And a lot of people can't do handfuls of those every day, but even just one a day, even just 3 a day of nattokinase and serrapeptase for the fibrosis. And probably even less people can afford a massage every week, unless you have a partner or whatever that you can integrate that. But do what you can. That's a big part of my message. It's not an all or nothing thing. And that's where people get paralysis and they don't do anything because there's just too much to do. But it's like, no, at least, get blue blocking glasses, right? Get Stetzer dirty electricity filters. Some of the more advanced things that I talk about, like the Magnetico sleep pad, the Blue Shield, Somavedic, those are all pricey investments. And that's definitely later on, but there's some simple things. I mean, just unplugging your Wi-Fi router at night, there's simple things that people could do like today to start.
Yeah, totally. So many things to talk about. Maybe let's go into the differences in water sourcing, because you were able to give me that shortcut, like when I started following you in 2017, that spring water is a waste of time. And thankfully I have bought it on occasion, but luckily where I am in New Zealand, it's the parts per million is what the TDS meter, that cheap one, it's like 45 or 50. So it's not too bad, but I still do have a water filter. But let's go through like why spring water's a waste of time and people are out to lunch on that, the distilled versus RO, and any other types. I mean, deuterium depleted, that's another big one. We can go over that as well. So maybe just start with spring water.
Yeah, and so I was deep into this for a while. You have characters like Cruz, like Vitalis, and a lot of people that are talking, praising spring water. And so I dove as deep as you possibly could into that. And being born and raised in Southern California, I didn't have too many good sources for spring water. It was mostly just well water. And so what I would do is drive to wells. And at one point I was spending $2 a gallon. And I was driving to the Sequestrian Center in Southern California. I think it was near Carlsbad, if anyone's down there. And it was this special water, healing water that, the woman said a lot of people had alleviation of their symptoms from. So I'd go and fill up my car and, 40, 50, 60 gallons. I did feel something from that water. It was definitely like the first time I drank it, I had tingling in my whole body. I definitely had some effect there. So I'm not discounting, the power of water from the earth, like especially spring water, but even well water from a deep aquifer. But what we have to realize is that the whole earth is contaminated from burning fossil fuels and from the Industrial Revolution. And so we have sulfuric and nitric acid. These acids do seep into aquifers. And that's something that I think the acid rain deniers, don't think about. I mean, I bought this house here in Idaho late last year, and I had the water measured before I had my whole house water filter put on. And the pH was 5.7 and the TDS was very low. I'm trying to remember what it was. I think it was around 30, 34, something like that. And so that shows that there was acids in my water, in my well water. And granted, it's only 39 feet, so it's essentially surface water. That's still significant. And then the two filters, the two little dinky 10-inch whole house filters that some people have on, especially in rural areas, the previous owners, caked with iron, like just completely rusted out brown. And all the well water was going through this before it was going through all the faucets. And I met these people that I bought the house from, really nice people, beautiful people, but they were kind of, just getting crippled, and people would call it all old age, that they were accumulating iron. So even people out here in rural Idaho, like I'm really out there in the woods, and you would think, oh, wow, I have pure water. No, it's not. There's iron and acids in my water, which is why I have a whole house water filtration system, which was quite an investment. That's definitely not a place for people to start. It took me 5, 6, 7 years of dreaming of this before it came to fruition. So getting back to your question, it's not all about ppm. It's not all about parts per million with water quality. There's multiple different aspects to water quality. And I think that's where even intelligent people kind of fail with thinking about water. They think, oh, if it's low parts per million, then it's good for you. Oh, not necessarily, because you could have low parts per million tap water that's full of sulfuric and nitric acid, and that'll eat your bones. It'll wreck your health over time. So I've gone through a journey of doing mostly well water from different sources, picking it up, and then, I put it in a 5-gallon carboy in a little water crock. And that was a good start. And then I moved to distilled water. And I first started with a Mega Home, which is like a $200 distiller, eBay. And then I moved to, I think it's called AquaCure. It was a pure stainless steel, a big one, like $500, and drank pure distilled for a while. And then I bought like a dinky RO, reverse osmosis system, from eBay. And so I played with a lot of different water filtration systems. And it wasn't until it was about, I believe, 5 years ago, I stopped at Pristine Hydro in Laguna Woods and met Glenn Calkins and the people over there. And that totally changed my life. It totally shifted my whole trajectory with health, totally shifted my whole message, because I dove full on into their lifestyle, which was essentially magnesium, drinking real water, which is acid-free, contaminant-free, bicarbonate-rich, which is what real water is. What's what spring water used to be before the Industrial Revolution. Magnesium bicarbonate, shilajit, both of those every day, bee products, and body work. And I essentially integrated all of that and totally changed my life and just shifted everything for me. I really didn't realize how important it was until I switched it. So yeah, and you mentioned the deuterium depleted, just to finish the rant. I looked into that for a little bit, and deuterium is heavy hydrogen, and you have this idea being promoted by a lot of quantum health people, which I just kind of scoff at. It's like you throw the word quantum in front of something and it becomes this mystical, you can kind of say whatever you want. It's quantum, right? It's just, it's spooky action at a distance, every possibility. It's quantum, DHA, it's quantum, it's necessary. No, it's not. So deuterium, they say that it can help reverse cancer and all these things. It's like, what can help reverse cancer? Magnesium bicarbonate, getting the pancreas working. Getting the beta cells of the pancreas to produce insulin. They need bicarbonate ion. The pancreas needs bicarbonate. It doesn't need PUFA. And getting the liver working. How about that, right? The primary detox organ. It's like when people with cancer, whatever disease it is, they're like looking for like deuterium depleted water, the magic thing. It's like, no, it's just getting back to basics. Like, what water are you drinking and bathing in? You might want to get a shower filter if it's tap water, and do your best with water. I tell people, go to a water store if that's all you can do. I don't know if you have those there in New Zealand, but here in the States, you could just search water store. And this one I used to go to, it was a whole room was the filter, a whole room in the back. And then they had all these spigots. So it's just like a little, oasis where you can go and fill up your jugs. Normally it's like, I don't know, 30 cents a gallon. And if someone doesn't have that, then they find the dispensers, and just try to stay away from this, the stupid mainstream ones that you'll find in front of convenience stores. Like, go to a health food store and they'll generally have a better setup. And then do that and just fill up and do a water crock until you could afford like a pristine hydro travel unit, which to me is a worthwhile investment. It's like $800 US, and you just replace the filters once a year. And they're the only ones, as far as I know, that has this technology, that has this specific way of bringing the water back to what it used to be. Because I've looked, there's nothing else like it.
Yeah. A few points that I wrote down from that was, like you're saying with the spring water, I mean, you might be lucky. It might be better than the tap water that you were having, but do you even know? Do you even own a $10 TDS meter? and I made a video about this. I haven't uploaded it yet, but like most of the people advocating for spring water, do they even own like a $10 TDS meter? They probably don't. And it's which is ridiculous. And I'm not saying that's not even a really legitimate thing at all. I mean, that's just one tiny aspect, but at least you could, invest in that and assess that. And most of them aren't even testing for that. And then they're not obviously doing like an analysis. I have heard of one person, I think, that commented on an Instagram post of mine. They're like, I've tested mine and it's not got this. And I'm like, okay, then you're all good. I mean, there's still arguments to be made about the problems with that, but at least, I'm not going to pick on people like that at all. And then the other thing was with the spring water thing, if we don't get more filters around the world, then the human bodies are going to be the filters, and we're not going to decrease the pollution. Like, that's literally on a global scale. If we want to remove the contamination that's in this cycle, it has to get filtered at as many stages as possible, and then collected. And then I don't know what we do with all that junk once we've collected it, but we've got to collect it all. The other thing that I was going to mention is, I'm trying to get in contact with the guy from the Primary Water Institute for an interview on the podcast, because what I think is a lot of people who think spring water is healthy, they're actually thinking of primary water. And so primary water is the water that has never come out of the earth yet, if I'm understanding it correctly. So there's a logic that therefore it's not polluted. I'm not saying it's perfect, but and there's a Hungarian guy, he's I think based in like the US though, who's done a lot of work on that. But most people are thinking spring water is that, but it's not. It's coming from the rain or from whatever. And then on deuterium depleted water, again, I'm sure there's been some studies that prove that it's beneficial, but it's like people can't afford that. There's full stop. It's not going to happen. It's not going to be taken up on a large scale. It's not really something that you can get mass done on a large scale. So, not really going to promote something like that when most people can't even do it.
Those are awesome points. Yeah, I think we have to send the spent filters up to space.
Or maybe there's something like, I don't know, that can be collected and made into something. I don't know.
Well, I like your point that we're the filters if we don't get filters, and to me, that's really the solution to taking back our power from whoever you want to call it, the global elite, whatever name, right? It's like, getting water to people, but getting this type of water to people is really, really the key, because the body runs on electrolyte salts. We have voltage-gated ion channels, and you probably heard my conversations with Morley Robbins. He's a mentor of mine, and he's known as the Magnesium man, but he also talks a lot about iron and copper. And he says those are the only three minerals we have to worry about. And if you're iron toxic, then your magnesium burn rate is sky high. And I think that's what a lot of people don't realize with health. They're spinning their wheels, trying all these different herbs, trying to deuterium depleted water. And meanwhile, they're RBC magnesium deficient in the red blood cell. And the reason why is because they're iron toxic and they're copper deficient. And so it's a deep, deep issue that raises the magnesium burn rate. And magnesium is not just required for generating energy in the cell in two of the cytochromes. It also activates 42% of our enzymes in our body. So 42% of our enzymes are magnesium dependent. And the enzymes are the spark plugs that allow allow biochemical functions to happen. They're the spark plugs of life. And so if you're enzyme deficient, which is why I have enzyme products, it's kind of a short-term solution, taking digestive enzymes. But if you can actually restore the function of your body primarily with magnesium, then it could start making these enzymes that activate countless thousands or hundreds of thousands actually processes in your body. And so that's a big thing I educate on, is the magnesium burn rate. And there's different types of magnesium. There's magnesium in the water, which isn't chloride. It's unless you're drinking ocean water, it's natural. There's small amounts, but it's naturally magnesium bicarbonate in the water. And that's our primary source. And then in the food, we have different forms of magnesium, but it's not in the food anymore. It's in the salt, which is, magnesium chloride. That's in like sea salt, but you're not going to be eating, ounces and ounces and ounces of sea salt. And so the water is the most practical way for people to get magnesium in. And so, yeah, big fan of that. My whole house system is outfitted with that. Goes through all these stages and then it's coming out of the tap. And so that's pretty cool because you're actually getting it transdermal at that point.
Yeah. And I just wanted to add on in terms of, could go on for ages in terms of the levels and different types of pollution out there, but one that I think just really shuts down the whole spring water type people is think about Chernobyl and what happened in Japan. And there's been other tests and other leakages here, there with seriously polluted stuff. Like oil tankers have accidents. The whole, there's massive amounts of pollution to just think that you can just go down and get some stuff out of that's come from the rain and expect that to be healthy is insane. And the other thing I wanted, go ahead.
I just want to add on to that point. In Northern California, like Grass Valley area, I went and visited my friend Jonathan. He has a chocolate company years ago. And there's a lot of springs in Northern California. A lot of the pipes are rusted out, and that's iron oxide. And so I feel like a lot of spring water hunters just need to use their eyes. Maybe they have too much lipofuscin in them, which is complex iron and PUFA. But you look at the spout that the water is coming out of, and it's rusted out. And that iron is going into their water because you have acids in that spring water. And so what that means is it's eroding that pipe, and you're getting iron in your water. And this is like iron filings type stuff, like what they started adding to our cereal after World War II and our grains, iron fortification. And then you also have calcium. And so I used to drink like Gerolsteiner, or there's like Perrier, these different sparkling mineral waters. You're drinking rocks. And that's a big concept for people to get, that it's as bad as fluoride to me. Fluoride is the thing that, Alex Jones started talking about and all this, and everyone's was all about fluoride for a while. But how about fluoride is equal to hard minerals in the water, the hardness. And even if it's, 100, 150 parts per million, if there's a lot of calcium in there, you're going to further antagonize your magnesium. So most spring water people are getting excess iron, calcium, and acids. And it's a horrible cocktail that further depletes their magnesium that they're not getting in the food. I'm drinking coffee right now. People say, oh, there's magnesium in coffee. There's magnesium in orange juice. Well, maybe. I'm not going to count on it.
Yeah. There is, I think it's magnesium carbonate, which is the fertilizer that is on organic farms that's used to get magnesium into the soil, which is a rock dust, which I think there's only 5 mines in the world for it, or not many, but that's a topic that I'm actually trying to research at the moment and interview some people on, is the issues with even the organic fertilizers. I know there are some okay organic fertilizers, but where's the line drawn? And that's a complicated topic. But another thing I just wanted to mention was, and because here's the problem, we were talking about it earlier in the podcast with people go into the health industry, they've decided to stop eating McDonald's, they decided to be healthy, whatever, and then they fall for these traps. And one of the big traps, and I don't know if it's bad to say the name, but there's the Kangen company, right? And it's a multi-level marketing, and I've been contacted about that. And this is the thing, because people end up spending I think it's New Zealand dollars, it's $4,000 or $2,000 for a piece of equipment, which doesn't even do that much? Well, you've had a bit of an experience with that as well, haven't you?
Yeah, and this is really tied into the New Age community, which I speak out about often. But it's this whole, Dr. Sebi, the alkaline diet, the mucus Arnold Ehret, mucusless.
It's all about the pH.
Right? Yeah, the pH miracle, the mucusless diet, Arnold Ehret. All these people go hand in hand. And Alfred Bowman, which is his real name, he sued Michael Jackson, Dr. Sebi, or tried to. And he was selling an iron supplement. It's just total quack. You can read it on Quack Watch, but I know that website's like whatever, but there's some good stuff on there. So yeah, it's there's so many traps. I forget the question.
So the Kangen, like the problem is they're focusing only on the pH, right? They're not do they even test for removal of things? I don't.
It needs a pre-filter for it to even work. So you're getting acid-free tap water. And so when you spend $4,000 or $5,000 US, you need to actually get a carbon filter, which might be another couple hundred to go before it. And it's like, why not just support a company like Pristine Hydro that already has it? You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to spend 4 times as much. Just get their travel unit. You can make it an undercounter. You can take it with you. It's versatile. So the Kangen is a total scam because of the way it's set up. And I fell for this years ago, multi-level marketing. And so there's different companies. Amway, there's, Young Living.
Enagic?
I think
Enagic?
I think that's another. Yeah. Purium. There's a lot. Basically, it's either like essential oils, green powders, or a water filter. That's usually like the 3 main categories of multi-level marketing.
Yeah.
What sucks is there's just a huge markup. And so it's a weird system where like someone that's not well off financially, they have someone that comes to them, preys on them and says, hey, you could, have your own business and just amp them up. But you have to invest $500 to $1,000 to get in. It's like you could start your own supplement line or start your own product from scratch with close to that amount of money. I mean, even less if you handcraft it and do it out of your house, which I did for years. And so it's just ridiculous. I think people have this, it comes from like a scarcity mindset. Like, they're just grasping for money. And meanwhile, there's a huge markup, like at least 50% markup. And so the people buying from these companies are losing. And, there's a down line. There's all these little terms in it. But really, I always tell people, just go for affiliate marketing. It's like almost every company, you scroll down to the bottom, there's a little button, affiliate, click it, put in your email. And now you can make 10% on the sale. And you just share a link with people, put it up on your blog. No investment at all required except for buying their product, to try it yourself. So I'm on my website, I have all my recommended products and stuff with discount codes. And I think that's an ethical way to do it, especially if you're using the products yourself. And it's a much better way to support companies while you make money. But yeah, Kangen it basically electrocutes the water. It's metal plates and it's called electrolysis. And it doesn't even remove the acids from what I understand, because even tap water can be alkaline if you add some alkaline drops to it, like pH, like drops, but it just masks the acids, which is crazy. It doesn't actually neutralize them. So people have this like weird kind of mentality that you can neutralize things in water. I don't know if you remember Aja Clarity or these little drops. It was like a raw food kind of supplement, vegan stuff, but people like add these little drops or these liquid supplements to water and say, oh, I'm neutralizing the toxins in it or whatever. That's not how it works. You have to, through pressure, push water through a membrane. And so that's basically the Pristine Hydro. It goes through cation and anion deionization, which removes various different types of acids. And there's different types of resin filters that are used. So there's like different qualities of resin, different types of resin. Different companies have different qualities of actual resin. I used the Berkey for years. My parents used the Berkey for years. That doesn't remove any of the hardness, and neither does the Kangen. You put water through a Berkey, you put water through the Kangen, measure the parts per million with, like you mentioned, a simple $10 eBay TDS meter. it doesn't change. I mean, it might go down by 5 or 10, but what's the difference between 480 and 470? You're still going to get, you're going to turn into a rock.
Yeah, there's multiple aspects to it. It's tricky. So let's get into the Clf protocol, because that's the kind of the main event, and we'll just do it in order. So C, I know there's especially a lot of questions. Well, we've got Q&A for at the end, but I have some stuff that I want to say for the L section, the lipofuscin. That's a pretty interesting one. But let's start off with calcification. So I've got the article up, but basically this is due to what?
So primarily the food that we were raised on and the water that we grew up drinking. So the food and the water are loaded with calcium. And you mentioned fertilizers earlier. There's this big story, the untold story of Justus von Liebig called the Chemical Gatekeeper. When there was a famine in Germany in the 1800s, and he basically cooked minerals down to ash and was trying to figure out what life was made from. And he found NPK, nitrogen, phosphate, and potassium. And the story goes that whoever you want to call them, they took his discovery and ran with it, even when he found that, there's more than 3 minerals in the food, in the plants. And they had already shipped the fertilizer out worldwide. So this isn't just like a US thing or only part of the world. It's a global issue. The fertilizer was sent out everywhere. And so these are actually magnesium antagonists, and actually they're using calcium hydroxide on the soil. And so it's this basically the situation where you have toxicological synergy. You have acid rain, you have the fertilizer killing and mutating the microbes in the soil, you have tap water going on it, and the plants are just weak. And then you have non-native EMF, as I'm sure you've looked into, and that changes the process of how plants grow with calcium efflux and different things. And then you have the farmers using pesticides, herbicides, insecticides, fungicides, and then all of these things basically they combine to not allow the plant to uptake minerals properly. And so if a plant has a choice between living and dying, just like a human, it's going to choose to live, even if it's drinking sewage water. And so it's like that movie Idiocracy, which I joke about. Like they're giving a sports drink to the crops, and that's reality, actually. That's a documentary. And the plants are uptaking these inorganic minerals, and they're swelling up like a balloon. That's what this fertilizer does. And they look good. It looks like food. It tastes like food, but it's not real food, even if it's organic. And that organic food, that medical medium celery juice cleanse that you did, further depleted your magnesium because you have these calcium antagonists in there. There's a magnesium antagonist in there, like calcium, potassium, another magnesium antagonist, especially in that form, that inorganic form. And for the listeners, inorganic in food, basically it means that organic has a negatively charged carbon attached to it, which makes it like a battery. So a metal's positive, a carbon's negative. That makes it a little battery, and that's an organic mineral. The plants that we were raised on are inorganic, so they don't have a carbon attached to it. And so you're basically getting an incomplete mineral, which is why I promote Shilajit so heavily and why I take it every day, is because it has fulvic acid in there that will chelate and complex it. And so it's
a pretty scary situation. I've been looking into the NPK thing. I want to make a YouTube video on that, and to try and make it easier to explain to people. And from what I'm learning, at least just with the basic understanding, is that the synthetic, quote unquote, synthetic or artificial fertilizer doesn't build the soil at all, whereas the other one, the better organic and biodynamic and compost and those sorts of things, they do build the soil. And what you were mentioning there with they do grow, but they grow with very weak cell walls, apparently, with the synthetic, and weak cells, and they're full of water. And the thing is, so I think Syngenta, like they take into account like just 20 elements for that's all they take into account for growing plants. Like it's on their website or something. I watched a European Union guy do a presentation on it, and just the minerals, and then like oxygen, hydrogen, carbon, and nitrogen. But the thing is, even though the human body only requires it's only made up of because it is majority those other things, but the small amount of magnesium and the small amount of stuff is crucial. And even though it's required in a small amount, it is absolutely crucial. It's like missing the ignition on a car. Like everything else could be there and it won't work properly. And yeah, no one's talking about that. And the thing is, with the organic farming, from my research where I'm at the moment, it depends a little bit on the farm. Like you can have organic farms or even non-organic, just people homesteading that are doing it in a certain way. Like, what's his name? Joel Salatin. I don't think he's certified organic because he likes to be beyond organic, because there's USDA organic certification requirements that he doesn't meet because he likes to farm in a certain way. And so it's not necessarily all about that. I mean, that's a good ballpark thing to look for, but yeah, like for example, I don't know how many countries it's like this, but with the organic nitrogen fertilizer, in some countries you're allowed to use factory farmed chicken manure, and what they do is they factory farm chicken manure, which they've been fed all sorts of hard things, they've had a hard life, and then their manure they process whatever the hell that means, and they make it okay to use on organic farms, like pasture based ones. I don't think they'd use it on vegetable ones, and so it's met whatever minimum requirements they have. But surely a lot of the toxic stuff that's in there is not, you can't process it out. I mean, I don't know what they're doing to it, but that's unfortunate. And then with the synthetic phosphorus and potassium, they get a real harsh treatment in massive factories. There's only a handful around the world that it basically comes in a package in a way where nature would never naturally uptake it. It's complicated.
Have you heard of biosludge?
Yeah, that's a thing. Yeah, they do that, I think, in the US, and I think they were trying to think about doing it in Australia. Because the thing is with that, it's a difficult one, because in the ideal world, that is actually the only way we can have a complete nutrient cycle, where human manure would be part of a cycle. It wouldn't go directly onto the pasture. It would go into, say, a forestry area, and then those trees would help those trees grow, or we'd mulch some of the trees and use the wood chips and compost, which would then go on the pasture. You'd make it as many degrees of separation as possible from the manure to the food, obviously, but that is the ideal way to have a nutrient cycle. But the thing is, everyone's contaminated to different degrees with pharmaceutical drugs and heavy metals. So I've spoken with professors about this, and they say that's why it hasn't happened yet. I mean, I think they're planning it in Europe and in Queensland and Australia, that sort of thing. But that's the main problem, is that everyone's manure would be so toxic that that's not worth trying to do, and that's why it doesn't happen. But they're already doing it in the US, aren't they? With everyone's contaminants. Is that right?
They are, yeah, and it's so toxic that it's actually, it doesn't meet the standards for even lined waste dumps, like specially lined toxic waste dumps. It's too toxic for even that, and they're using it in the agricultural system. So, yeah, I think people just miss that foundation, I'm eating organic, or I'm doing a juice cleanse, but what water was used, what fertilizer was used, that's so crucial. And so that's why I promote an animal-based diet, because the animals act as a filter. And so if you're doing raw goat's milk, you're doing grass-fed steak if you can, or grass-fed ground beef even, pastured eggs, raw cheese, all these things are generally a lot safer than the plant foods, for this reason. And what's scary for me is even thinking about the acids and how it kills the alkaline ones and mutates the acidic microbes. people, even homesteaders, they're growing their food outside and, exposed to the elements, exposed to acid rain. And even if it doesn't rain, it falls to the earth by dry deposition. And so it's kind of a scary thought to think that we don't have real food really anywhere on the planet, which is why here on my homestead, what I'm trying to do is have a greenhouse, have pristine water going into the garden beds. I'm going to try to set it up in a way I'm still learning as I go, but at least I'm using acid-free water on the plants, and it's covered with a greenhouse. And I'm doing my best there. But people up here in Idaho, they definitely have a piece of the puzzle. Like my carpenter even does compost tea, which is cool. And you can grab indigenous microbes from the forest and throw them in there, and throw some shilajit in there. I throw shilajit resin. I've been doing that for years, actually, growing plants with shilajit resin. I think that's a good way to go about it if you have a really small operation. But
yeah. I think that's why, like you mentioned with the animal, another advantage of animal-based nutrition from properly raised healthy animals is that you're getting that degree of separation again from the fertilizer to the plant to the animal to you, rather than fertilizer plant you. And so I don't know what the term for that is, but you're getting it's in a more natural state. And I think that's why a lot of people, they feel great on the carnivore diet, but then they kind of take it to the next problem extreme, where they eliminate carbs, and they become scared of, some of them in some cases even scared of honey.
Yeah, a good way to think about it is primary filter and secondary filter. And so the animal that we eat is the primary filter, and we're the secondary filter. So
true. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, so basically the solution for calcification is
so it's basically magnesium bicarbonate to limit. Actually, pull up my article for a refresher, because I have so many things I want to talk about too. But magnesium bicarbonate. I mean, if you don't have access to that, you can do magnesium chloride baths, which I did for a while. Like foot baths is probably an easier way to high dose it. But I get filtered water, I heat it on the stove, and then throw in the bath flakes. Epsom salts don't work. That's magnesium sulfate. It's mostly sulfur. But however you can get in magnesium, a lot of people, for whatever reason, they can't make it or buy it. And so, in that case, I think the magnesium chloride is a good way to go.
Yeah, I like the spray. I've got a whole lot of it here, like bulk bought it a few years ago, but it's annoying because it sticks to clothes. It can sometimes itch. So I use it on my feet and in socks and stuff like that. And you can sometimes use it on your head as well. But yeah, it's not well, it's better than any supplement you're going to get from the store, though.
Yeah, and I've experimented with a lot of those, like glycinate, taurate, threonate. I've taken a lot of those in powdered form, and they definitely work. I think the key with magnesium is to get up in the 2, 3, 4 gram range if possible, and that's easiest to do with the magnesium bicarbonate because it's a liquid form. But I think most people underdose it. Ideally, you would kind of track your results with a lab, like a magnesium RBC blood test, which is beyond the serum, because a lot of people are okay or high in the blood magnesium, but low in the red blood cell. And that's like pretty standard across the board. I mean, you have people out there like Chris Masterjohn's like, oh, it's magnesium transport that's off and you need B6 or whatever. But no, I think it's just mainly people getting the wrong form of magnesium and not getting the magnesium bicarbonate in.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, there's the whole overload of calcium that is further messing up the seesaw that the ratio that we want to have. And you've also got the non-native EMF component with voltage-gated calcium channels, so that the cell is flooded with calcium, and every time you're exposed to Wi-Fi, and that's just one example, but that further makes the problem worse, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think if you search, it's like mineral wheel. If you search that on Google or DuckDuckGo, And
Yeah, duck, duck, go.
you'll see the connection. As you said, magnesium and calcium are on a seesaw. Everything's on a seesaw. And so when people supplement isolates, like I'm a fan of colloidal silver. I make it, and mostly topically. But if you take colloidal silver orally, if you take enough, like you're guzzling it, even homemade, that's good stuff, you'll deplete your selenium. And so silver and selenium have the seesaw. Zinc and copper have the seesaw, which is big for me because I see accounts on Instagram or whatever, influencers promoting zinc picolinate as an immune booster for the coronavirus or whatever. It's like, guys, that's gonna tank people's immune system, recommending zinc, because whenever you supplement zinc, you're lowering your copper. People are already low in copper because copper regulates iron, and everyone's iron overloaded. So they don't have enough copper to activate ceruloplasmin. Their liver's not functioning. They can't even make ceruloplasmin. Everything's just, when you add beef liver to your diet or bee pollen or whole food vitamin C, everything gets better because cytochrome C oxidase, any enzyme with oxidase, any oxygen dependent enzyme is involved with the utilization of oxygen, and that is copper dependent. So everyone that's just all about flood the body, oxygen, oxygen, ozone, need to get in more oxygen. It's like, are you actually using the oxygen? To use the oxygen, which is the next step of the equation, you need copper. So it's not just about getting, Wim Hof breathing and all this stuff, just flooding. Because if you have so much oxygen, you can't use it. You have oxidative stress. So
yeah.
So anyway,
so in addition to with the magnesium, like ideally you'd be getting lots of magnesium bicarbonate, and you've got video how to make that. I've got one that's in the schedule on YouTube as well. And then there's magnesium chloride, but then also shilajit, right? Because that's the sort of way we can combat the lack of all these, micronutrients that we want to be getting in the soil that are not there. And you sell panacea for that, right?
Yeah, and that's something that I recently came out with because I've been taking it myself for years, mostly in powdered form. And I tried the little resin here and there, and I just find you can't get up in the dosages. And you'll buy a little bottle. It's like $80 for just a little tiny, I don't know, it's 30-gram bottle. That's going to do nothing to you, nothing. Because you have to get up into high dose shilajit consistently to have an effect. And so I drink coffee almost every day. I'll take a day off here and there, and I'll put the powder in there. So the powder from pristine hydro is just extracted with reverse osmosis water. And it's like 5% fulvic acid. And there's a cool synergy there. I have like cream in there, maple syrup, and shilajit. And it really is like rocket fuel. And you could even take like 5 tablets of my panacea, or even 3, and each one's 200 milligrams. And so the dose really matters. But yeah, in a nutshell, shilajit is, they say millions of year old. I question whether the Earth is that old. I don't really believe in evolution, but it's a hundreds of years old. It's very old, and it's from different mountain ranges, high elevation around the planet. So it's in the Andes, it's in the Himalayas, it's even the Rocky Mountains. And so the one that I sell is from the Altai Mountains, Siberian mountains in Russia. The powder is from the Himalayas, and I truly believe it's the red pill. A lot of us are probably frustrated with spouses, partners, family members, friends, where you're having discussions with them and you just hit a wall and you just see the wall in their eyes. It's like this gloss. It's the stare. It's just nobody's home, right? And you might be trying to talk about things that are very life-changing. Like, hey, like you could break through this plateau if maybe you just shifted this little thing. I'm just trying to help. And they just have it's this weird fog where like they can't, like, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do know what you mean. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And the good thing with shilajit is like I assume this is what you're alluding to, is that it's these things that we need in small amounts. Like you've mentioned indium, you did a story on that, which was kind of interesting. And but they're necessary in small amounts, and so it's a good thing that it's okay that we only have small amounts of it, like in these tablets or the powder form, because it's what's required in small amounts. So it's not something that makes sense as a supplement.
Yeah. It's basically the whole periodic table of the elements in one, and known and unknown. So indium, as you mentioned, is people take that and like there's colloidal gold and all these weird playing the element game. It's really dangerous. People are taking colloidal indium and all these isolated elements. Shilajit's a whole food supplement, which means that it's safe. You're not taking ascorbic acid, you're taking camu camu or elderberry or acerola cherry or something like that. Same thing with Shilajit. You're not taking isolated elements. You're getting all of them that are carbon bonded, that are all actually chelated and complex. So what Shilajit does, really the key phrase, is that it chelates and complexes all monovalent and divalent atoms. And so with excess iron, like iron overload in the body, that is a form of iron that our body cannot process. You can only get rid of it by bloodletting, by bleeding in war. Even menstruation doesn't get rid of enough. So women that think they're anemic or that they lose enough when they menstruate, nope. Women are iron overloaded just as much as men because they're drinking tap or Berkey or Kangen or spring water or well water. They're full of iron. And so Shilajit to me is a solution not only to calcification, but for iron overload. And there's actually a study on this. I think I have it linked on my Mitolife site on how it improves anemia. But anemia is such a crap misdiagnosis. No one understands. Anemia doesn't exist. No one's anemic. How can you be anemic when iron is everywhere? It's in our water. You're bathing in it. You're drinking it. It's in your food. We're all full of iron. And so whenever someone's anemic, they just have iron dysregulation. And they looked in the wrong spot. They looked in ferritin, which was changed in Spain in the 1970s, I think by design. You actually have to look in the macrophages and you have to look at the whole picture. It's not just looking in one spot. You have to look at TIBC, UIBC, transferrin, ceruloplasmin, iron saturation percent. There's like 5 or 6 metrics. And also in the context of magnesium, there's so many things. But I really think this is the foundational thing. And they all work together, calcification, lipofuscin, fibrosis. It's this destructive kind of combination.
Yeah. Yeah, and so the thing is with Shilajit, like it's making the rounds, which is good. I think you're one of the people responsible for that because you've actually been talking about it for ages, like from the time I started following you in 2017. And I'm even seeing now primal people, like raw carnivore type people, acknowledging that Shilajit has merit, and maybe Spherage even will share at some point. I think the more extreme people, eventually they'll at least have to take the red pill that you need to be supplementing the soil. Like you either supplement to you or you amend the soil, or you give it to the animal. Like one way or the other, it needs to get added to the system.
Yeah, I like that you brought up the carnivore people because I follow Sean Baker and my friend is Tristan Haggard of Primal Edge Health. I think these people mean well. I don't think they're shills. I think they're great people that have a great message and they're actually helping others. And that's pretty rare in this community. But I think as you made a story the other day, it's like when a big influencer says that, you don't need supplements, and it was like the eye roll or something like that. And it's so true. It's like, you don't have to buy my company, Mitolife, whatever, but try it. And I mean, you have to look at the context of what we're dealing with today. Is food enough to reverse a lifetime of canola oil? I mean, after high school, I used to go out with my friends and just fast food every day after college, first 3 years of college, just every day going out to eat. We'd actually ditch class and go to get pizza, canola oil, right? And just all this crap. That's not going to detox. That's not going to leave you. I know it's a buzzword, detox, but you have to look at how to get these PUFA breakdown products out of the body, how to get calcium oxalate crystals out of the body, how to get these things out of you. And I think you need tools. You can't just use purely nutrition because even the meat's not optimal. That's the thing that you have to, like, do you think your grass-fed, grass-finished beef, like I have, the steaks, do you think they were drinking pristine hydro water? No, they were probably drinking tap water. And so they have all these things. So you eat the meat and you're getting them. It's like, should you go breatharian? No, you do your best. But you eat predominantly animal foods. And then I mostly point people to the magnesium, the Shilajit, and the vitamin E is like the 3 things to get on. And those will really help.
Yeah, so that's a good segue into the. So we finished kind of calcification roughly. I mean, shilajit, magnesium, and now lipofuscin. This is probably more complicated because people usually haven't even heard of the word. Like, there's not much information on YouTube if you search it. Like you mentioned, I watched that Silicon Valley Health Institute guy's video you posted, but that's about all there is out there, and it's a bit of a conspiracy. I mean, like, there's literally I've started to notice it ever since you posted about it. I think it was 2018 or early 2019. But like, for example, like I met someone who runs a company that sells omega-3 flaxseed or that sort of product, and I noticed the lipofuscin. Like, it's everywhere. So maybe explain that. It's iron plus PUFA. Is that basically it?
Yeah, it's a complex one. I'm still studying it. I would say the world's expert is my friend Adam Bergstrom, really interesting fellow. Yeah. But he's written a bunch of books on it, and he's who I learned a lot about. I have all his little ebooks on it. But yeah, the Silicon Valley Institute, if you just search that on YouTube, lipofuscin, that's a good intro to it. It is complex. It's complex iron, polyunsaturated fats. There's an aluminum component, so basically just a heavy metal component, and an estrogen component. But if you want to just simplify it, we could say it's largely iron and polyunsaturated fats. Because if you take those things out, you're kind of pulling the rug out from lipofuscin, and you could start to break it down. And yeah, like you said, it's like that movie They Live, that old movie where he puts on the glasses and he could see people that are running the planet, you know. Yeah. Puts them on, they see the bug eyes, and they're like creatures from another planet that are. And so I was just on a plane. I went for my brother's birthday, and you'll see it at airports. You'll see it on when you go out. You'll see it. Just I saw a guy like 5 seats in front of me on his head. It's usually people that are balding, like older men with the hair on the side, and they have the big bald spot in the middle of their head in the center. Yeah. And the high spots in the corner of their forehead, you'll see that's usually where it is. And you'll see these dots. And I have it in my article, but they're easy. They almost look like freckles. And,
almost. Yeah, we'll get into that. Yeah, the difference, because it's not the same.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, a lot of people, I've seen some people try and criticize your thing on it by saying, well, not all PUFAs are bad. And it's like, well, you're not saying that like necessarily, like, I mean, let's say you get, like an organic chicken or whatever, and you're eating the meat, it was grain fed, blah, blah, blah. It's not ideal. We get that. But there's going to be a bit of PUFA in the chicken, even if it was fed non-soy, it was fed the right stuff. That's not what we're like panicking about. I mean, that's not ideal. We fix that in the future, have better farming methods. But the issue is how much canola oil, soybean oil, corn oil, all that gunk did you consume growing up? And did your parents consume and you inherited? Right?
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's very true. It's the context of how you're raised. I mean, here in America, we just got hammered. Like after World War II, they started fortifying the food with iron, with a metallic form of iron, ferric iron, I believe. And so it's super toxic. And then canola oil, replacing these healthy ancestral traditional fats like butter. I remember when I was vegan, I was doing the earth balance. And I was just at the store the other day, and we're looking at the container of like, I can't believe it's not butter. And it's like second ingredient, canola oil. So all these butter substitutes, because saturated fat and cholesterol clogs your arteries, which is total BS, as we know. That's kind of at the root of it. We've been, especially Americans, have been tricked, to cut out these traditional healthy animal fats for these substitutes. And yeah, they accumulate in the tissues, and whenever we're stressed, and that's synonymous with whenever our blood sugar is not regulated, which is synonymous with keto diet or intermittent fasting, it's all stress. and everyone's stressed all the time. And then you put on non-native EMF on top of that, Wi-Fi, 5G, whatever. And then you have these PUFAs being released into the bloodstream. And they're very sensitive, just like outside your body, like a fish oil, krill oil, algae oil, seal oil, or we could say, the extreme is canola oil, safflower oil, sunflower oil, almond oil, any kind of like nut or seed oil. They're very prone to oxidation by heat, light, and oxygen. And that's what's in our body. We have UV light, but if you want to just stay at simplistic terms, you could say we're 98.6, we're a tropical body, and we have a ton of oxygen. And so it makes sense that when they go into the bloodstream, you're going to have something called lipid peroxidation. And that's why this is kind of a conspiracy thing, is because when you search online, like Google, which is the worst, but they show you what they want you to see. And they'll even recommend products to you there on top. Here, buy your fish oil here. It's good for the brain. And even these people in the biohacking community, like Dan Amen and all of these other people, I don't know if they're ill-intentioned, but it's very, very big in the biohacking community and alternative health community that it's required for a healthy brain, omega-3 fats. And we have to really question that. Are they supposed to be there is the question I always ask. Because they say, it's 40% of the brain or 60% or whatever number. Well, the more omega-3 you have in the brain, the higher your risk of Alzheimer's. That's just well proven. And if you search acrolein, ACROLEIN, that's a cancer-causing breakdown product of polyunsaturated fats. So it's really looking at it in the context of our current situation. When you have excess endotoxin, which we might talk about, it's lipopolysaccharides, this it's this toxin that bad bacteria make. And it's kind of a crazy system because the PUFAs feed that. So it increases endotoxin. So you have endotoxin and you have iron, you have increased lipid peroxidation. And that's really the key phrase for people to get is lipid peroxidation. And everyone has increased rate of lipid peroxidation because of chronic magnesium deficiency, chronic iron overload, because it's in their food, it's in their water. They don't donate blood 4 times a year. They're not on Shilajit. And as I mentioned, the spots on the forehead, it's also on the hands and forearms. Anywhere that's exposed, anywhere that gets a lot of sun, because the ultraviolet wavelength will actually spread it. And it could actually contaminate nearby cells. It's kind of like a zombie effect. It infects nearby cells when light hits it. And so I used to be a sun worshiper. I think you might have seen that. And I used to do the ice baths and the whole deal. And I was megadosing algae oil that I used to sell, and I don't endorse anymore. And just supplementing it, like I would say algae oil is equally destructive as canola oil, or your fish oil capsules are equally destructive as canola oil. And that little piece is really people would challenge me on that and say, well, no, it's not. Well, yeah, it is. They have the same effect on the body because they're DHA 22 carbon length, 6 double bond. The more double bonds a substance has, a compound has, the more unstable it is. And so these just cause oxidative stress throughout the whole body. And it causes this cascade of effects that increases your serotonin, which is actually a stress hormone. It increases your estrogen, which is another stress hormone. So you have increased serotonin and estrogen, and it can actually throw off your mood and cause anxiety, depression, brain fog, fatigue, and eventually Alzheimer's and dementia. But I stand by that omega-3s, especially in concentrated form, cause cancer, heart disease, and diabetes, and non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Everything that's blamed on sugar, to simplify it, is really omega-3's fault. And polyunsaturated fatty acids are kind of an umbrella with omega-3s and omega-6s. And people think omega-6s are worse. I would say they're actually a little safer. Omega-3s, DHA, EPA, and ALA are actually the ones that cause lipofuscin the most. Those are the most dangerous, are omega-3s.
Yeah. And two things I noted down here is that with the sun, and it's just so, it's kind of cringe when people just don't want to research a little bit about this. They just want to be like, no, the sun's good, and I do get a lot of sun, but I acknowledge that I don't think it was as bad in New Zealand. Like, I had a lot of butter growing up, and I never had a vegan stage or phase or anything like that. But I acknowledge that I need to, fire infrared sauna, I do that occasionally, get whatever the heck is in the skin out. Because even before I knew about the lipofuscin, it just made sense that, because people already in the sun worshipping community will tell you that, like, oh, why are you getting sunburn? Oh, it's to do with stuff that's in your skin reacting with the sun. And now we're just saying what one of those things are, but they lose the plot. But I do think that you are changing the narrative, because I've recently seen some of those sorts of people talking about fish oil being toxic. So it's getting accepted. It's just you're just pushing the boundaries, and I think eventually they'll have to admit that mega dosing seafood might not be a great idea for everyone.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I think it's really getting people off studies, because the most common question I get is, do you have I'm trying to convince someone or share this with my friend, and they're asking for a study. And is there a study that shows that omega-3s are harmful? And that's like asking the cancer industry to self-destruct, truthfully, because the omega-3 business is a $20 billion a year industry, the supplement business. And when you look at anti-aging proponents, a lot of what they promote is omega-3s, for a healthy aging brain, and resveratrol, which is also another big business, both of which are super, super toxic and actually contribute to the formation of cancer. And so I think, like you said, there's like these infiltrators, kind of like these double agents or whatever, that have infiltrated, and people like Dr. Raymond Peat, which is a huge influence and mentor of mine, he's written some good articles, like essential fatty acids, essential or toxic, I think is one of them. And there's a lot of references there, but you're never going to find a definitive article. That's really the thing for people to get. You have to search lipid peroxidation. You have to search acrolein, lipofuscin. We really have to connect the dots ourselves. And that should be an obvious statement. It's kind of sad that I actually have to say that, because they're never going to spell it out for us, whoever they are, because there's industries that are making a lot of money off of sick people. And just because you're out of the conventional world and you're in the alternative world doesn't mean that you're safe. There's a whole nother layer of vampires, that people that want to prey on you for your money, right? And so there's various levels. And I mean, they don't want you to know that vitamin E was used by Dr. Evan Shute in Canada to treat over 30,000 people with heart disease, with varying heart disease conditions. And yeah.
And like, with the anti-aging thing, it just seems so stupid that like taking these droppers of whatever the heck it is going to be like the anti-aging key. Like, from what I'm continually researching and looking into this stuff, it seems to me like, I mean, the raw carnivores have an aspect of the equation correct. I think that animal products in their raw form is a part of it, and people are going to get grossed out about that, having that stuff on your plate, but it's a reality, and you should test it out. Like, I tried that out. I've always been a rare cooker of red meat, and in the last year I've tried the raw, and it does taste good, but you obviously need to be more careful with quality. But that's a side topic. Let's talk more about vitamin E, because this is the one of the supplements I've had you dissolve it all and digest it all, but I really, really, really want to try the vitamin E. It makes so much sense. And even regardless of lipofuscin toxicity, it has been kind of pushed to the side and ignored. And especially when you have like those old books, like pre-1930s and stuff that are advocating for it, for me, that's like a sign that it's something worth looking into.
Yeah, Herbert Bailey, he wrote a lot of good books on vitamin E. And you're absolutely right. The older material is generally more accurate. And that's another like fallacy that people have. It's like, oh, the new research, the latest and greatest, this new discovery is the best. No, it's actually, we need to look at the old stuff that was suppressed. And that's a lot of what I educate about. So yeah, the vitamin E requirements are increased 6 times with polyunsaturated fatty acids. So I have that study linked on my site. And It's actually built into nature. And so you were just talking about grass-fed beef, which I eat pretty much daily, and that has omega-3 in it. But grass-fed beef has higher amounts of vitamin E than grain-fed beef. And that's been well proven. And so the solution is built in a lot of the time, but with nuts, seeds, grains, some vegetables, it's not enough vitamin E to counteract. And so, like you said, a rare steak, even medium rare, you're getting a significant amount of vitamin E there. But where I'm coming at this with is to detox years and years and years, like my personal canola oil consumption when I was vegan and I was doing all the fake, butters and all of those things, all the fake animal foods, or even I did soy for years and all. It's like so much PUFA. And I've experimented with, when I started on vitamin E, high dose, I was doing 8 capsules a day. And now I'm averaging about 4 capsules a day. It's about 268 milligrams each. It's kind of a confusing metric because 400 IUs is 268 milligrams. So I generally just tell people 1 to 2 a day is generally enough. Even a high PUFA meal, just 1 400 IU capsule is enough. I have a sunflower-based one, and actually by the time of the show, I'll probably have a MCT-based one, which I'm really excited about because people often ask, like, there's PUFA in sunflower oil. Why, But I'm like, no, the vitamin E will neutralize it. But now, just to simplify things, I'm coming out with a PUFA-free, just medium chain triglyceride. It's an MCT base of the vitamin E in that, because vitamin E is fat soluble, just like A, D, and K. And you can take vitamin E as powder form. I just question whether it's effective. I would rather have it emulsified in a fat. And I take it with me whenever I go out, having a burger and fries out at a restaurant. I'll pop at least 1, usually 2 to 4. And I definitely feel the benefit. When you get into increased dose, you actually have an athletic effect. And actually, there's a study showing like mental retardation, eye conditions, muscular dystrophy. Muscular dystrophy is actually synonymous with lipofuscin. So if someone has that condition, it's lipofuscinosis. And 3,000 IUs a day have been shown with those conditions. So it's definitely not giving medical advice here, but just saying, experiment with vitamin E. I would avoid soy-based, but there's tons of studies on it. And it's not talked about because it's cheap. It's like when you compare vitamin E to fish oil, it's like vitamin E is half the price. And that's kind of by design. They don't want you to, it is the antidote. It is the counter. So we're talking about the seesaw. Mm-hmm. You have on the one side PUFA, you have on the other side vitamin E. And so it's a seesaw. And I don't think we can get enough from our food. Now, do you have to megadose it like I did? It's up to you. I mean, when I was selling the algae oil, I believed in it so much. I was downing bottles, like drinking it like a shot. And that's 30,000 milligrams. I was doing 30 grams of algae oil of DHA at a time. And so I saturated myself for just about 1.5 to 2 years. And to me, that's very scary. So for someone with a history of omega-3 supplementation, I would personally high dose vitamin E. And people ask, is that safe? Well, if you read some articles on Google, they'll tell you be careful because it's going to cause X and X and heart disease and all these things. I would say as long as you have A and D and K coming in, like you're eating cheese, Parmigiano Reggiano, you're eating aged cheese, you're maybe using a Sperti D light or getting out into the sun, and you have some butter, you have vitamin A coming in, you have beef liver. If you're getting the other fat soluble vitamins, it's safe to me.
Yeah. And so 2 things I wanted to mention there. One of them was, to me, I haven't tried it yet, but I really do want to. It makes sense to have an extract. It's like you can't fight. Yeah, you have to fight fire with fire, sort of mentality. Like we've to everyone to differing degrees depending on the country and how you're brought up and stuff. But like you're potentially poisoned via an extract. So to expect a natural food to fight back on that, it's not logical. And again, it goes back to what we're talking about at the beginning of the podcast. think about how bad things really are. Like, just accept that red pill, and it makes sense. So then I wanted to confirm. So is it the new one, like, so MCT, which is derived from coconut oil? So coconut oil derived then to MCT, and then the vitamin E of the MCT is then extracted. So it's like that's the kind of order. Is that right?
Well, it's still from sunflower, so it's sunflower derived vitamin E, because it's usually either from soy or sunflower. Those are the highest sources, and it's a sustainable source of vitamin E, and so it's extracted from non-GMO sunflower seeds, and then that is put into the base of MCT. So it's kind of like an emulsification kind of combination. And I don't buy into the whole like liposomal and micelle. I think that's a total marketing tactic. It's a way to, increase the price of the product. I mean, even if you blend an egg with your smoothie, that's like a way to get kind of that, liposomal, if you want to buy into that whole thing. But I don't think we need like these super enhanced, souped up delivery systems that all these supplement people are talking about. I bought into it for a while. I was doing the vitamin C sprays and the glutathione and all that stuff. And it just gets so complicated. I think we really have to focus on the basics, which to me are the CLF, right, and the solutions to those. But yeah, I like your point too about fighting fire with fire. It's like you don't have to be on vitamin E for life. I would say do a detoxification and then go down to a maintenance dose. And my product's called PUFA Protect. That's for the immediate harm. And so you're going out to a restaurant and you're going to have this meal and you're not sure what they're cooking your steak in. And I don't think it's even necessary to ask. You can just assume they're using canola. And then you just take one capsule and it's just keep it in a Ziploc bag in your pocket or whatever. And it's problem solved. You don't have to make things super complicated and, ask the waiter a million questions.
Yeah, because you actually mentioned something which I had never thought of in one of your stories. Are real good. Like if anyone's new to this, follow Matt's stories. Lots of funny things, lots of interesting things, like random tips. Because you mentioned one time that if you pester them a little bit too much, be like, "Can you cook it in butter, coconut oil, whatever?" They might spit in your food. And I was like, far out. I need to be careful, because I have been that person who's rung up and been like, can you, and at the table just asked. So yeah, what a world.
You never know. Yeah. And it's just, I think people just, they sweat the small stuff, and I might seem pretty extreme, and, a whole house filter. I have only orange and red lights, air filter in every room, hypoallergenic air filter. I might seem like neurotic about health, but I'm really not. Like, I let things go when I travel, when I go out to eat. Anything goes pretty much. I mean, I generally stay away from pork and chicken. I can't remember the last time I've had chicken. It's been years. But like you said earlier, I mean, it's if you do it here and there, it's fine. Ruminant animals actually do detoxify polyunsaturated fatty acids better than like poultry. But I still like turkey here and there and different things. But generally, you want to stick with, beef, bison, venison. Lamb actually have higher DHAs. Do you want to limit the lamb?
I heard that, yeah. I used to think that was a good thing.
Yeah.
Like in like 2016, 2017. But I mean, lamb, but I think with lamb, it's not like a big deal. It's still a trivial amount. And often on the flip side of that, like, I don't know what it's like in the US, but lamb, the farmers that farm sheep, the quality on average of a lamb is better than on average of a beef. Like, because if you go look up in like the Western Day Price, they do a letter thing which has sources like best, good, okay kind of thing. And one example in there, they have New Zealand lamb in the good, but New Zealand beef is not necessarily in the good. And that's because there is one, it's not a CAFO, but there's one like a feedlot type thing, I think, in New Zealand for cows. So that's, and quite a few go through there. So that's just something worth pointing out. But maybe last point on the lipofuscin before we go into fibrosis is just to get the message through to someone that we're not saying, or you're not saying that like the omega-3s that are present in trivial amounts in grass-fed beef or in an egg, pasteurized egg, or in raw milk is a problem. You're talking about the people who try and sell you things specifically for it, the fish oils and stuff, which is a waste byproduct from the fishing industry, by the way, and the krill oil and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, great point. And even in the protocol, I say consume a minimum of 3 pastured eggs a day, soft boiled or sunny side up. And that's generally what I do. I usually have 3 eggs for breakfast with some sprouted barley or sourdough bread, which I do fine on. And you need that choline for the liver detoxification process. It's called glucuronidation, to kick out the polyunsaturated fatty acids, because they get stored everywhere, but they mainly get stored in the heart, which causes heart attack. It basically it's suffocating the cells. That's an easy way to talk about polyunsaturated fatty acids and lipofuscin. Lipofuscin's an oxygen sink, and so it's just robbing oxygen from the cells. And so when you do that in the heart, which has a huge requirement for ATP, then you're at risk of various types. I mean, congestive heart failure is associated with lipofuscin, heart attack, and you combine that with magnesium deficiency and vitamin E deficiency, it becomes very dangerous. And so the heart, the liver, the brain, but they're accumulating everywhere. But yeah, as you said, don't worry about natural omega-3s found in food. I would just say, if you can eliminate nuts and seeds, they're not required. Limit. I limit. I don't avoid grains and cold water seafood. But really, the nuts and seeds, I don't think there's really. They're pretty stressful in the body. They don't support the metabolism. Sprouted, if you enjoy them, it's just, I would rather, if I'm on a hike, I would have some pemmican or some beef or some type of wild game jerky or some fruit jerky. There's companies where you can buy, purely fruit, I think, or solely fruit. They have like pineapple jerky or mango jerky, something like that.
And gummy bears.
And the gummy bears. Yeah, that's a great, I think people just need alternatives, and like something that would be a lot healthier would be like homemade gummy bears instead of nuts and seeds. I mean, I know when I used to go rock climbing, free climbing with my friend in the valley, we would just take sprouted nuts and seeds, and I'd eat kind of whatever, like a trail mix type deal. And I didn't know that was actually harming my health. So it's really, gelatin, red meat, fruit. Those are all safe snacks to do.
Yeah. Sweet. So let's go fibrosis, the CLF. I didn't know about the word fibrosis really, except scar tissue. I'd had experience with that because of like with injuries from people doing athletics and things like that. Scar tissue is quite common term there. But let's talk about fibrosis maybe.
Yeah, so even people that have had surgery are familiar with like runaway scar tissue after a surgical operation. That's very common. It could actually just keep spreading out of control. But for the common person that hasn't had surgery, just a regular person, they still have it from calcification and lipofuscin. So whenever you have tissue damage from either of those, or stressed tissue, inflammation, when the tissue can't get oxygen, it can't utilize oxygen, it can't generate energy, then you have a resulting scar tissue formation. It's called fibrin or fibrinogen. There's different types, but mainly fibrin. And on the website, I actually have a spider's web because that's what it looks like.
Yeah.
I believe Thomas Myers has talked about it a little bit. People in the kind of the functional
functional balance people talk about that as well.
Yeah, and it's really the cause of it that is important, because we have to understand that NPK grown produce causes advanced glycation end product related inflammatory fibrosis. There's all these different forms of fibrosis. So AGE, advanced glycation end products, people think, it's from red meat or from cooked meat or whatever. It's really from the NPK vegetables. Like, I pretty much don't eat vegetables. I don't think they're a required food group. I think, fruits are a lot safer. A lot of people talked about anti-nutrients like oxalates, phytates, lectins. If you cut out nuts and seeds and vegetables, really don't have to deal with those, and your health will thrive. with that. I would say just don't cut out fruit. Just eat seasonal fruit because that's still very beneficial. But yeah, the scar tissue, it also inhibits oxygen and decreases energy. So it's kind of like this, it's like a self perpetuating cycle where it just gets worse and worse and worse. And it just builds and builds and builds. And so there's different ways to get rid of it. I used to think it was just manual body work. So I was doing kind of like using like the hypervolt, the rapid release kind of vibrational technologies, and then getting deep tissue massage once a week. Those are all solutions. But if you really combine that with the magnesium and then the Dissolve It All, my product that has 2 proteolytic enzymes, which are protein digesting enzymes, pretty much your body will tag exogenous proteins that aren't supposed to be there. And
so how did those proteins get in there? And like to create the tightening of the muscles and that?
From the inflammation. So it's kind of like a natural response to your body, like a protective mechanism where it builds up to try to protect from further damage. But it's almost similar to how stress affects us when we have polyunsaturated fatty acids. So the normal stress response, you would have saturated fats that help to stop that stress. But if you have more PUFAs than saturated fat in your adipose tissue, then you have runaway stress. And that feedback mechanism just keeps, it's like a positive feedback loop. It doesn't stop. I don't know if that makes sense, but
yeah, no, that sort of makes sense. Yeah.
It's kind of a similar
and with the because with enzyme therapy, that's something I'd never heard of until you launched that. And there's actually quite a bit of evidence for the nattokinase and serrapeptase, right?
Yeah, and some people say, that there's not, but I've gotten crazy testimonials. Like my close friend's mom, she would take like 9 capsules before bed and wake up without back pain she had for years. And like consistently like slamming them right before bed. That's generally a good time to take them, like when you wake up and before bed. And they circulate in the body for 6 to 12 hours, like Pac-Men. And they actually eat this fibrin. And so they're actually a good first aid to take on a hike. If you get bit by a snake, I would take a ton of them because it'll actually eat the venom circulating in you. Any kind of like bite from a creature, it helps with that. They're really, really, really strong anti-inflammatories, but they're getting at the root of the problem. So yeah, enzyme therapy, I mean, it's been talked about by some holistic doctors. I don't know if you remember the one or the string of holistic doctors that died. I think it was like 3 or 4 years ago.
Is this the MASF type thing, whatever it was? The GCMAF?
Yeah. I mean, they were studying kind of a similar thing.
Oh, true. Okay, yeah, because that was that like the colostrum supplement, or am I thinking of something else?
Yeah, but I think they were taking like an extract of it. But there was actually another guy, I'm trying to remember his name. He was studying enzymes for cancer therapy, and he got thrashed by the FDA. So, yeah, I mean, I look at it as primarily an anti-aging thing. It's associated with so many conditions. Basically, I look at health as bioenergetic, like generating energy. When your cells cannot generate energy, then we have disease. So if that happens in your thyroid gland, you have thyroid issues. It happens in your brain, you have brain fog and emotional and mental issues. It happens in your pancreas. You can't metabolize sugar properly. Happens in your liver. 500 functions go out. And so I just try to simplify things in that way for people to kind of explain, like, someone that's obese, they have an energy deficit, right? And that energy deficit is probably in their liver because it's full of polyunsaturated fats and scar tissue. And it's these 3 accumulations that to me are at the root cause of all health problems that people are dealing with. Now, I don't know how many people will want to go to this level because a lot of people are just looking to treat symptoms and chase symptoms and, lose weight and just get rid of this one symptom. But if you go at it from this perspective and go that deep into it at the foundation and get the motors working, utilize oxygen, work at the enzyme level, the mineral level, get your vitamin E, your vitamin K, then you'll start to see, systemic benefits throughout your body. But all these things work together: vitamins, minerals, enzymes. All three of them work together. And some people that talk about enzyme therapy say that enzymes are the most important. And some people talk about minerals, say minerals are the most important. I say they're all important, and they all work together equally. But a lot of people are missing the E and the K, and they're missing copper, and they have too much iron. And so these things, like the Dissolve-It-All, you could slam systemic enzymes and have an immediate effect, but the scar tissue will still be building because you haven't donated blood or eaten beef liver or taken Shilajit. So it's kind of like the magnesium burn rate. The fibrosis thing is probably the last thing, which is why it's, the last CLF. It's the last part of the protocol because it probably takes the longest to break down. And, you can do one bottle of my Dissolve-It-All and you'll have an effect. And it definitely is the more the better. But you want to make sure that you're at least on the basic things. You're not drinking hard acidic water. You have a shower filter, all these different aspects. So you're not building up insane amounts of scar tissue while you're trying to get rid of it.
Yeah. And maybe like you mentioned, body work with, I do a lot of self-massage, like from the Functional Patterns YouTube page. They share a lot of exercises there, like to, really got to, massage and get your elbow in there or someone else's elbow in there to break up the scar tissue. We've got some questions we should probably get onto. So this one, we should probably, can taking vitamin E reverse the age spot? So we should quickly just first explain the difference between an age spot and freckles, because I don't know if someone asked that in here, but they did message it to me. Because how do you tell the difference between a natural freckle and a...
Unfortunately, you really can't. I would say because lipofuscin can migrate anywhere. Even people like I have moles and stuff. It can migrate into these like melanin areas, concentrated melanin.
Okay.
So really, with that question, I would say if it's new, then it's lipofuscin. If you had it your whole life, and it's probably a freckle. But
that's a good point. Yeah.
As far as I know, there's not really a way. It's just a visual test. It's like take off your clothes or just look at the place that gets the most sun, and generally you'll see it's like brown spots that you'll see on the skin.
Yeah.
For everyone visible, there's 10 to 100,000 beneath the surface. And so that's kind of the scary spot. And I've had people message me, age spots show up after they started supplementing vitamin E, because that means they're actually leaving you out of the tissue, which is good. It's a good thing.
Yeah. And we already mentioned it before on the back of people's hands, but like seriously, I looked at my one of my grandparents' hands, and it's so clear, and it's so clear that this is not normal. Like, and the fact that it's not being discussed is a massive red flag for me.
Yeah, and we didn't talk about red light therapy. Like I always have it on me during interviews and things. That's a big passion of mine, and I think it's generally safer than the sun now. It's a little bit of investment. And there's a billion red light LED companies now. I started with the heat lamp. I think that's good. I think that's sufficient for someone starting out, like a little 250 watt heat lamp, and a little metal kind of clamp thing that you can get. It's a cheap $20 solution, but if you can invest a couple hundred in an LED, usually it's 660 and 850 nanometers. So you have visible red and infrared. That's very beneficial. If you can combine the red light with vitamin E, you'll see the spots fade faster. I'm actually using this with my father to see. He's kind of my experiment. So,
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah.
Next one is can you mention freckled in the one about age spots? Are they bad, good? Oh, we sort of just covered that. There's a slight difference, natural versus unnatural. Someone asks, talk about humates with him. See his opinion as it seems more viable than Shilajit, which is the humates is that I don't know if it's always in the same spots on the earth as Shilajit, but it's like old humus, right? Which is more likely to be less contaminated and going to have some more of those micronutrients that we want to add to the soil.
I'm a fan. Yeah, I'll probably experiment with that in the greenhouse. I just have so much Shilajit here that I'll probably experiment with both and see the difference. But yeah, whatever is the most sustainable, I definitely think that's a good option. I'm still learning. Like, we're using worm castings and rock dust and a few other amendments. It's definitely, people think growing food is easy and it's just adding water and some compost tea. It's actually very complex. I think the water quality is the most important thing. Getting the acids out of it and protecting it from the elements in a greenhouse setup. But yeah, giving it the right mineral source, I think that humate's great. Yeah.
How necessary are digestive enzymes in the context of everything else?
So I look at them as a temporary help or kind of a first aid thing. If you're having a stressful day or you're recovering from a trauma, because the pancreas is what secretes our digestive enzymes, and its production will drop by 50% under stress. And so I teach a lot about stress and cortisol, and I was an intermittent fasting obsessed guy for years. I was promoting it for health and anti-aging. And then I learned that whenever we starve ourselves, the system releases cortisol to mobilize stored glycogen, and cortisol and adrenaline. And over time, that will actually harm our adrenal glands, and our liver will, because of the adrenal function going down, our liver cannot store as much glycogen. So literally the percentage, just like on your iPhone, like the percentage charge goes down. Like, you can't store as much energy, which means you wake up in the middle of the night, because you run out of fuel. So a lot of people have benefit just having honey or milk right before bed, or I have ice cream before bed. And, that's just sugar and cream and vanilla. It's pretty clean, a few gums in there, but I do fine with that. So yeah, that's basically, it's a temporary thing if you're dealing with stress or you're in recovery from fasting. Or you just want to get more, like I do it with my steak, and you can up the protein utilization from 30% closer to 100% just with taking one digestive enzyme with multiple different types of proteases. So protease is a protein digesting enzyme. And I have 5 in there that work at different pH ranges. And so I notice a difference if you've been fasting. I think digestive enzymes are a great thing to add in.
Yeah, and I also think it's a good point that you brought up there with the digestive enzymes helping with protein absorption and utilization. Is also, people always just assume that with food, you get it, you eat it, your body's going to assimilate everything as normal. But it's like, no, there's so many stages. There's first sourcing the right food, then consuming it in the right way, like not cooking it too much, and then is your body actually healthy and prepared enough to use it properly or use it to the full extent? And I think I've also heard magnesium deficiency means you can't get the protein out of your red meat as much as you could have. So it's multifactorial.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, magnesium is involved with carb, protein, and fat utilization. It's like everything. But yeah, it's another, because if you're not fully digesting your food, it's another stress load. So to take digestive enzymes, my friend Matthew gets on me with all the pills because, you really have to, you can be I know some of these people, like what's his name, the anti-aging guy, Ray Kurzweil. He's doing like handfuls, or Dave Asprey characters, handfuls of pills every day. But I think if you're doing the right ones and you're spaced out and you have somewhat of a plan, then it's okay. And I usually opt for gelatin capsules. Like that's all my vitamin E products. And gelatin's a superfood. It's a protein source of non-inflammatory amino acids, or anti-inflammatory, I should say. And that's a lot of the capsules I take is in a gelatin base instead of cellulose. So.
Yeah, sweet. Next one is, are the metals in Shilajit a concern? I'm pretty sure that's just they're in minuscule amounts because it's part of that whole sort of natural source, but they're in non-toxic forms, or they're so trivially small.
Yeah. This is where a lot of people get confused. Fulvic acid chelates in complexes, and it attaches carbon to metals. And so aluminum, lead, cadmium, arsenic, if these are with fulvic acid, they just go right through you. And it's not an issue at all. And we're getting those anyway in our foods and small. I mean, even melted cheese, like if you ever get a burger, that's a really decent source of aluminum that you're getting there. And so I find that really, instead of trying to micromanage like a lot of people do, like, oh, there's a little bit of silicon dioxide. I try to avoid that in supplements, but every little thing, if you have the foundation down, you don't have to worry so much about little things. And to me, Shilajit is one of those foundations. I also sleep on a 20 Gauss Magnetico, which helps with heavy metal detox. I also drink orthosilicic acid, which is a form of silica. That
the Orgona, the brand?
It's different, actually. It's
okay.
Yeah, it's a naturally occurring form of, but that is a good one. That one and this one to me are the only worthwhile forms of silica to take. And they both, silica is like the seesaw we're talking about, to aluminum.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, a lot of people have aluminum toxicity, and it's, I wouldn't look to Shilajit. I would just look at a lifetime of consuming, melted cheese and just these foods, going out to eat.
Yeah.
I mean, you're getting it all the time. So just make sure you're getting silica. You don't have to worry about it.
Someone says, oh yeah.
I was going to say same thing with magnesium. Magnesium is a natural heavy metal chelator. So people don't think about that. But if you have sufficient magnesium levels, you don't have to worry about like cadmium and arsenic and lead, because it's going to kick those out.
I didn't know that. Someone says, if you could live anywhere, where would it be?
I've been thinking about that. I'm pretty happy here. I just wish there was more fruit. And so I like the cold, but someplace with a lot of fruit, a lot of grass-fed red meat, probably from my own farm or nearby farms, a lot of raw goat's milk. Somewhere with sufficient fruit and animal products would be the main thing, because the issue here in Idaho is because it's cold for half the year, we don't have access to fruit unless it's shipped in from Mexico or whatever. And I think that, gelatin or bone broth, fruit, raw milk, and red meat, it's like my ideal diet or nutrition plan. And so looking at kind of like South America or something like that, potentially maybe a Costa Rica, kind of something like that. But I do like the cold. I feel like it's a good test for my metabolism. And as long as I can keep my metabolic fire going, then I don't get cold hands and feet like I used to when I was vegan. And I could actually go outside with my shirt off and be fine for extended periods of time. But yeah, ideally somewhere with a good, fruit source. I didn't realize how much I like citrus till I moved to Idaho. It's like, oh, there's no, lemons and oranges. It's just not the same as like California.
Yeah. Food sourcing is a big thing. Another one is, well, we've kind of already answered this. Are we lacking enzymes? And if we are, how do we replenish them? We are. We are lacking enzymes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And do you have to take digestive enzymes for your whole life? Probably not. I'm really big into anti-aging, and I do think that enzymes are a key part of that. I think it's way more important than, fish oil people take as an anti-aging substance. If you would just replace fish oil with vitamin E and, even more than herbs, I think enzymes are more important because it really is reversing the biological clock when you take away these obstructions to energy production. And, being a 32-year-old guy, people look at me as, talking about longevity. It's like, okay, let's wait another 10 years and see. But if you put my face side by side, like my old YouTube videos, I haven't changed too much. And I've been getting a lot of messages about gray hairs, and I haven't seen any, but that's a sign of oxidative stress, usually from iron overload, when you start seeing gray hairs pop up. And these are pretty prevalent with biohackers now. And there's, lots of gray on the beard and the hair, and, all those liposomal supplements and live spring water and the Flower of Life glass. I guess that's not working because they're getting gray and all these tons of supplements. And so I just try to look at the foundation. And as we spoke about before we started recording, it's light, magnetism, water, animal foods, CLF, these sorts of things. And I really hyper focused on the light, water, magnetism thing for the last, maybe 3-4 years, like 4 years now. And I've really kind of expanded on that and kind of focused it a little more with what I understand now about these things.
Yeah, and what you're saying with the graying of the hair of the extreme biohacker people, it's because, they're also strapping themselves up to all these crazy gadgets all the time. And I don't like that direction of the word, the definition of biohacking. It's like going in this sort of, you could even say transhumanist, but even aside from that, it's all about like tech, biohacking tech. Which there is legitimate uses for, and we'll probably do maybe another podcast because we've run out of time to talk about some of the other things we had on the list. But yeah, there's way too much that going on. People wasting money on like all sorts of things that you don't want to be putting close to your head. Like I'm probably going to wait another 5-10 years before I try any PEMF. Once it's all like fleshed out and a few people have hurt themselves and they've developed like safe ones, then I'll look into it.
That's a really wise thing to do. And I mean, even people looking at the Dr. Dean Bonley Magnetico that I sleep on, they say, oh, that's unnatural. And why not just put a bed of lodestones under the mattress? Because that's pulse DC magnetism. But I mean, it's intelligently designed kind of tech. And there's not a lot of
in that case, there's no non-native EMF from that. So that's totally within the natural supplement kind of realm.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, though. I mean, I like that biocharger thing. It's like noble gases, like I think barium.
Oh, yeah, the Luke Story thing, yeah.
It's making like a loud noise, and you sit next to it, and it's the frequencies. It's just insane. Like $10,000 for that. I mean, why not? I would rather invest in a $2,000 Magnetico pad. You'll get way more benefit.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, are they trying to like market to 6 celebrities? Like, who's going to have that need and that money to buy something that silly? I don't know.
Yeah, my interest, you might have seen my stories lately, is with neurofeedback. I'm just kind of...
yeah, we wanted to cover that, but we don't have time. But yeah.
I have a little more time. Yeah, I'm a little obsessed with that because that's... it's really cool to see a device that's not, sending anything into the brain. Like I've talked about the SOTA biotuner, it's effective, but like true neurofeedback, I think that has really amazing.
So if we can cover it now, then let's talk a wee bit about that, because I've seen the stories and it is interesting. Because it's like improving your, I don't know, mental acuity, or like making your brain a bit more clear. Is that right?
It's kind of like subtle dynamite. My friend Tyler Powell introduced it to me, and it's basically 5 electrodes you put on your... Oh, it's not electrodes, they're sensors. That's an important distinction to make, because an electrode is beaming stuff into your brain. A sensor is just reading. And so these are just 5 sensors that read the electrical activity coming off of your brain more than 250 times a second. So I'm talking about NeuroOptimal. My friend Tyler introduced me to it. And I've done like about 30 sessions now. And the breaking point seems to be about 20, where people usually, but not always, see results. And Yeah, it's basically they call it a brain training device, and so they're very careful, and I won't make any claims with it, of course, but basically what it's doing is holding up a big mirror to your CNS, your central nervous system. And so you put these sensors on, you put these earbuds in, it plays music for a half hour, and it's an instrumental track that they designed. And whenever your central nervous system starts to go off track, and they describe it like going off on the freeway and you hit the bumps, you're either falling asleep or you're exiting. And so you have to choose whether you're going to exit or whether you're going to go back in a line and keep going straight. And so that's kind of the analogy. They use a lot of analogies like that. Or my friend Tyler said you're eating a burger and you have some sauce on your face and you go to the mirror and you see the sauce and you're able to wipe it off, right? And so same thing with this is your brain can choose, or your CNS can choose how to come back into balance with the stimulus of the breaks in the music. And so it's like a skip. In each skip or break in the song is the neurofeedback event, is the event that triggers your nervous system to be able to say, oh, okay, it's going off track. Do you want to go off track? And it's able to rebalance. So it's a really cool, innovative way to bring bring balance back to the central nervous system, which, it's central. It's been hit with all these things that we've been talking about. I know my friend Josh Rubin talks a lot about the vagal theory and the vagus nerve and all of these different things. And people are doing psychedelics and just throttling their nervous system, which is why I'm against them. I mean, I went down that whole rabbit hole. We really want to strengthen the nervous system. And I think neurofeedback is a great way to do that. I think it's very safe, especially this one. And you can find practitioners to do it because it's an investment for sure. But there are people that you can, pay $50 to $100, and it's like a 33-minute session. And the first one, I definitely felt a lot calmer, felt more irritable for a few days. Definitely, I could say just for me, neurofeedback, like the real neurofeedback, not, beaming stuff into my head, but just reading and mirroring to my brain. It's had profound effects on just how I live my life and decisions that I make. And it's really cool. So I think, people with a lot of trauma, they don't necessarily have to re-experience it to heal with like real neurofeedback. So yeah, hope that kind of made sense. It's kind of hard to describe, but Valdine Brown, there's a lot of podcasts with him, and there's not a lot of people that are talking about the brain like this as a nonlinear, dynamic, complicated system, and everyone rebalances differently. It's like their whole philosophy, which is awesome. It's like, you could strap a biotuner or something to your head and beam frequencies in, but do you need those? Because if you don't, it's going to push you out of balance. But something like this, it's just, you're able to go, depending on what you need, the direction that you should go. So yeah, that's been a little fun thing. And I have like the little Infratonic 9 Qi machine from my friend Shen Blossom, Brandon Amalani. And I'll put that, it's like a stochastic, it's like sound frequencies. Supposedly after like a Qigong master, but it's random frequencies in the human range using a little speaker in the thing. And it's been used to treat like gaping wounds in horses at equestrian centers and whiplash. It's just eliminated immediately. It's like $700, $800 device, but it works.
That's sound therapy, is it?
Yes. Yeah.
I reckon there's a legitimacy to that. I mean, not to be like new agey or anything, but like there's the Tibetan singing bowls. Like I've got one of them, just like the sound. And there's also the Corinthian chimes, and there's other sorts of wind chimes and bells that you can get like from Europe and stuff. And that, I find that fascinating. And I think it's totally undiscovered. We need to find out more, but there's definitely potential because we know that sound can harm. And so I'm sure good sound can heal. Like we have the Lennard effect, like with water water fountains and waves crashing and those sorts of things. That's separate from the negative ions component. There's the sound, which is, I think, because it's analog, right? So it's a smooth sound wave as opposed to someone tooting, right? It's mechanical.
You said Leonard effect? I haven't heard of that.
Leonard effect.
Leonard. Oh, I found it. I'm glad I have a creek right outside my back door. That's cool.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah, whenever I go out there and sit on the deck, it's just my brain's like, just like total relaxation. If I've been too hooked into Instagram or whatever, social media, and I'm just kind of wigged out, on the internet, I could just sit out there, and it's an immediate calming effect on my brain.
Yeah. Like I've noticed, like over the years, I've actually done too much, like listened to too many health podcasts, like just overdosed on like that sort of stuff. And I never use headphones. I always just play it out of the thing, and so I have distance and all that. And so I'm flight mode and all that. But it's too much. Like, and so, but whenever you hear more natural sounds, it seems to bring you back to neutral or undo the damage. And I think that'll be a future treatment for people with tinnitus. They probably already know that, some of them.
That's cool. Yeah, I get a lot of messages about tinnitus, and I asked Morley about it, and he was saying it's magnesium deficiency, which I'm sure there's some component there.
There's probably a mineral component to it. Yeah, sure.
That's interesting.
Maybe the other experiment that you could, if you've got time, briefly talk about is the whole magnetic bathtub, because this is next level. I've never heard of this before.
Yeah, and I always give credit where credit is due. I learned about this from the founder of Live Pristine or Pristine Hydro, Glenn Calkins, and he built this, I don't know, 10 years ago or something. And there's a video on their Instagram if you want to see it. If you go on their Instagram, they have a minute video of the bath. It's way back, I think, a couple years ago. But I'm not making it identical. I'll definitely make it a little different. But essentially, in a nutshell, it's a way to trickle charge the body with magnetism. And so for years, I've been educating people about good and bad magnetism. Like you have non-native EMF, unnatural, harmful, pulsed, especially magnetism that's draining the body. And then you have good magnetism, which I used to think was grounding, which is now I understand is more context dependent, especially after speaking with Stetzer, Dave Stetzer. And he was talking about prostate cancer going up with barefoot farmers by power lines. And so there's a lot of being barefoot's not always good. I think you know that, but if you're way out, then it's fine. But so this is a way to get safe magnetism, and it's I have 1,000 pounds of lodestones. This is in the works, but 1,000 pounds of lodestones, about fist to maybe 2 or 3 big, so that kind of size. And I'm going to mix into the grout pyrite, magnetite, and shungite powder. And so these are magnetic minerals, and then connect all the lodestones with that in the grout. And really the key is, it's not doing this with tap water, it's doing it with the pristine hydro water. So my well water, which is relatively clean, it has iron and acids in it. It's about anywhere from 40 to 70 ppm. It goes through 7 stages of filtration, my whole house filter. And it was kind of custom designed, but essentially sediment, carbon, DI is a redundant, magnesium oxide, and then the other minerals to add the bicarbonates in there. And then actually I have a little water dispenser that runs it over quartz and lodestones, and it vortexes it on a timer for my drinking water. So that's like the last step in the house. So it's pretty elaborate, but just for bathing, the last step is it just goes through this UV filter, which is just UV light coming through quartz. And that's going to be coming out into the bath. And so really the important thing is there's no acids in the water. And so it's not really going to leach the iron, because lodestone is magnetite. Magnetite's been struck by lightning. And it was the first compasses were made of lodestone. So I have a Gauss meter, like a TM191, and you could put it up, like I put it up to all the lodestones, and it pulsed all the way up to 150, 160 milligauss. That's pulse DC field. And this is natural magnetism. So these are like little, I mean, you could gain energy from these. I mean, not to be new agey, but you can just hold one. I have a friend, my friend Matthew, he keeps it in his pocket. And it's like, instead of holding your phone, a really smart thing is to hold a lodestone. And I used to, when I was a sun worshiper, I used to go to the wet sand and hold one in my hand while I sun gazed at sunset. I think that's an okay, practice if you live on the coast or whatever, sunrise and sunset. I think it's cool. I just wouldn't like put spiritual meaning into it or whatever. But in context, if you are on the protocol and you're decreasing the lipofuscin, which accumulates in the RPE cells of the eye, then a little bit of UV at sunset or sunrise is probably safer. But yeah, getting back to it. So about 150 pounds of quartz crystal clusters are going to go in there too. So it's about 1,000 pounds of lodestones, about 150 of quartz crystal clusters. And these are two really prominent stones on the earth, minerals. And yeah, it's going to be grounded, pristine water. And then I'm going to put in shilajit into the bath. So it's bathing in shilajit in that. And the shilajit and the minerals kind of light it all up. So that's kind of like the last, but that's in pristine drinkable water with shilajit and the lodestones. And it's kind of like, Glenn talks about in the Bible, like the pool of Bethsaida or the fountain of youth or all these different things. And there's all these little folk, potentials with it, but it just makes sense to me. I mean, I've been holding lodestones for years. I used to be a taxi delivery driver for years before I started Mitolife and started monetizing what I share. And I was just doing, taxi driving people around. And I would hold a lodestone. I would bring it with me all day. And I would hold it with one hand while I was steering with the other. And it did make a difference in, I feel like I was less drained from all that driving. Like anyone that drives a lot, just having a lodestone in your hand, I see people with holding their cell phone. It's like with the location services on all day and they put it in between their legs when they're driving. It's just like insanity. And like the opposite to that makes a lot more sense is to hold this magnetite that's been struck by lightning. And I'm sure, it causes this, the mitochondria just explode. The cells divide or die when you're holding this microwave transmitter. But the opposite of that is having the lodestone, which is actually helping the mitochondria in your hand. So that's a good little reverse. But the next level, is just to bathe in it. But it's definitely one of those more advanced things. I'm taking steps. I've been at this for 10 years. And so it's like, having a pristine greenhouse, these are things I've dreamed of. And I thank God for being able to do this now. And it's been just a lot of work to get to this point, but it's definitely more advanced stuff, whether, the lodestone bath or these things we're talking about.
Yeah, for sure. But it's a natural progression for you at the stage you're at and what you've got available. It's definitely legitimate, the benefits of or negatives of magnetism, because I'm reading a book by Nicole Belisma, who's a building biologist in Australia at the moment, and she has a whole section on different, because there's actually multiple different types of geopathic, geomagnetic stresses. And I assume like there's Curry lines, Hartman lines, there's things that can, like where water is potentially, if it's under the ground, under a bedroom, if there's certain types of minerals in the ground under a home. There's like so many different variables. I'm sure that there are places where it's beneficial as well on the flip side. Right. So, we know that there's negative locations, and some EMF specialists, like a guy I interviewed, Andy Hooley, he'll test for that before people build a home, like test the area. And so, but I presume, that there's also positive benefits, and that sort of connects to what you're doing there by using those sorts of rocks in a bath. Because I also have some shilajit. I was going to ask you this afterwards, but like it's from 2018, but the company said it's powder. They said it's not. They said they can't guarantee it's safe for consuming now, because I emailed them. I was like, just checking because I found it in the cupboard. And I was thinking, far out, maybe I should just use it in like a hand bath or a foot bath, and test it out.
I would. Yeah. That's a really effective way to do it. Just put it in, if you have a glass foot bath or some good material, filtered water, heat it up on the stove, do a little Shilajit foot bath. I think that's a great way. I don't think people realize how mineral deficient we are. And I like to think of the body in terms of electric wires, and we have all these electric wires, and they cut our magnesium wires. So 42% of electric activity off. And then you want to talk about indium. You want to talk about all these little tiny minerals that we've never even heard of that aren't in our food. And so you add these in, I mean, you're talking about really improving brain function, and I mean your relationships with your partner, your family, your friends. I mean, this is beyond just like, neurohacking or biohacking. It's like, no, you're improving your life at every level when you improve the electrical functioning of your body. And that's, I used to come at that from more of a new age perspective, and now I just come at it from more of a practical, grounded perspective. And just being wary of all these like expensive devices and trying to do it as naturally as possible. But yeah, I mean, getting Shilajit in orally and transdermally, get the minerals in the both ways. And people messaging me like I don't do well with sugar. I eat sugar and I get sick. It's like, well, maybe you need Shilajit. Maybe that will help with carbohydrate utilization, because it's not carbohydrates' fault. It's your mineral deficient, and especially your magnesium deficient. So yeah, it's one of those things. I mean, Shilajit it's a cornerstone of Ayurveda. It's in the Karaka. They say the more you eat, the longer you live in increments of 1,000 years when you get into the kilo range. So that's my personal goal. Even though I'm not, an Ayurvedic, don't subscribe to the spiritual philosophies and all of that, I think that TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, I take from all these systems. I take some ginseng, I take some Hoshu Wu, I take some ashwagandha, not only ashwagandha, goji, schizandra. I take a lot of the Shen blossom tinctures, medicinal mushrooms. Those are like my really, like, I'd say foundational stuff besides, Shilajit and magnesium and vitamin E. Anyway, a little tangent. But.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Yeah, I have that sort of same approach. Just take what you like from different areas, even if those separate information sources don't like each other or whatever. Then you can still take a bit from there, take a bit from here, and then combine it in what you think is the optimal way. Another question, probably the last one someone had here was. Vitamin A is essential for women expecting to get pregnant or who are pregnant. You need to have a good storage of it for the earliest stages of pregnancy. In many traditional societies, cod liver oil was given to these women. Does he think that if it's well sourced, homemade, and or not rancid, the cons still outweigh the pros?
I don't.
I mean, you could just have the cod liver straight, right? I mean, that's one way of circumventing this whole process.
Yeah, or just beef liver straight raw, or butter oil. Even Weston A. Price. I don't know if he invented butter oil, but I think he was one of the first.
No, I don't know if he did. There's a company I think called Activator X, or that used to sell it. But
yeah, I think that's a lot safer. And I don't know why people think that they have to get these insane amounts of vitamin A from these extracts. I mean, retinol is definitely a problem if you're deficient in it. And, there's this synergy between vitamin A, thyroid hormone, cholesterol. Well, you need vitamin A and cholesterol, cholesterol, vitamin A, and thyroid, all those like T3. That's really the synergy to make everything work and be able to handle a little bit of carotenoids in your diet, to be able to make enzymes, to make everything function well. But to take these megadoses of retinol and like cod liver oil, I don't see the point. High sources of vitamin A include grass-fed butter, eggs, you have milk, raw milk. If you're consuming these foods, if you have good animal sources, then, you can even get frozen liver shipped to you. especially if you're in the States. There's hundreds of companies where like US Wellness Meats, I have it on my website. There's other ones where you can get liver shipped right to your door. And so there's really no excuses on why you would have to supplement like these, like fermented cod liver extract. If you're just after
yeah, it's like from my perspective, it's something that you can easily get enough of from these better sources, so I don't just go for them first. But I think what maybe that person's alluding to, or what the idea that's circulating is, a lot of people that I'm a huge fan. I love the Weston A. Price Foundation, but people probably see that there's people who make reports on like what they ate to get pregnant and things like that. And so I think cod liver oil gets mentioned a lot there, and then that just sort of flows into the community, and people go, oh, sweet, so I should probably get onto that as well. Yeah. That's probably where it comes from, but who knows if it was actually the main contributing factor for those people having a successful pregnancy. It could have been all the other things that they were doing right. Because, if you're on the Weston A. Price website, you're probably doing every other thing really well. So,
yeah, well said. And I used to promote like vegetarian pregnancy, which I recant now and have multiple times. But to me, I see fruitarian babies just living on a fruitarian diet, and a lot of them just look like scared, like they're in fear. Their eyes are kind of bugging out, these babies drinking smoothies. They just look like something's off. And for me, really, a healthy pregnancy comes down to just animal foods. You have your protein, you have your real amino acids. Hopefully the pregnant woman's doing gelatin and bone broth, and your fat soluble vitamins and your carbs. It's just basic stuff. But A, D, E, and K, really looking at those. Instead of taking cod liver oil, vitamin E would be an amazing thing for a pregnant woman to take. Or even K2 and K7 coming out with that's more of a pure form, either this week or next. And I think if maybe even in addition to aged cheese, supplementing metaquinone, which acts like coenzyme Q10 and is helpful for energy production, helpful for dental formation of the jaw, of the teeth, so there's not crowding. The E and the K are really overlooked. It's like the A and the D are pretty easy to get if the woman's out in the sun. I mean, if not, she can get the Spurti vitamin D lamp, which I have. That's a good, safe way to get your vitamin D up. But yeah, vitamin A, it's just, even if you just did beef liver raw, and I just cube it up and then put it in the freezer in those little glass Pyrex jars, those tiny ones. Just have like 4 of those in the freezer and then just thaw it out and do just like one a day. And eating liver it just makes so much more sense to get your vitamin A than taking a supplement.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got some in the fridge at the moment. Like vitamin A and D do get a lot more attention. Like, I'm pretty sure when people talk about E, all they mention, I could be wrong, maybe I need to read more, but they usually just mention, rare red meat, raw goat's milk, because the goat can make vitamin E. And then I think maybe some nut. I don't know. Like, it doesn't get like, there's not a huge amount of natural sources of vitamin E in substantial amounts.
Yeah, and even just one capsule a day. You don't have to go, crazy and take a ton like I did, which I think is safe. But if just one capsule a day of vitamin E is huge. You actually have a discount code too. Grow Sanctuary, and people could save 15% on any of the Mitolife products. But I always tell people, it's like, if you're in another country and you can't get my stuff, just find what you can and just find something comparable and just do your best and just get on it, and you'll notice differences. I do my best to just share through my platform the things that are targeted, that can make the biggest difference for people, and not just like, here, take this herb, just like take this superfood or whatever. It's like, let's pinpoint like what the problem is with every person on planet Earth, and then, integrate and apply the solution.
For sure. Yeah, totally. Yeah. This has been an awesome conversation. I'm sure we could probably keep chatting about these topics for hours, but let's wrap things up. So where can people find more of your content, different platforms, support your work?
Yeah, they can go to Blackburn.com. And that's kind of like the hub where you can find Mitolife, and you can find my podcast, my YouTube channel, and all my different things. So, and then the website for Mitolife is mitolife.co. And you can order the products. You can be an affiliate too, and share them if you like them. And yeah, I'm always open to learning. The reason why I came out with Mitolife is because it's hard for me to find a supplement that I can stand behind. Because if people don't have kind of the foundational understanding of these things, then they'll put zinc in a supplement, or they'll put CBD in a supplement, or all these different things that I'm not really a fan of, and I don't think are necessary, and I think are just kind of a waste of money, and it can actually cause some harm. So that's the reason why I came out with my supplements, just to make them simple, make them affordable. And I take them myself, and I'm working on getting the Panacea back. I think it's just the international, with all the coronavirus scare, international shipping has just been insane, and everything's slow. And I just travel, and I saw people wearing the masks. It's just getting ridiculous. And who knows whether it's a serious issue or not. I go back and forth, and my friends have different beliefs on it. But from what I've seen, P73 wild oregano from North American Urban Spice is pretty effective against it if it is real. So
yeah, and like you can get the air filter. I know you promote them as well. Hypo Air. I've got them on my website too. The iAdapt and Hypo and the G3. They both have been tested against something similar to the coronavirus.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you having me on, and it's inspiring to see what you share, and I fully support what you're doing, and I think you're on the right track. And I could probably learn a lot from you about non-native EMF, because I was studying that hardcore for a while, and now I'm kind of just focusing on different aspects, the lipofuscin thing, but it all connects.
Yeah. And it's like the topics, there is too many to keep track of. Like with health, there's too many to keep track of. It's just a fact. And I try to keep my channel as broad and spectrum as it is possible, because that's what I'm interested in. I'm interested in all of them. But even then, you can't keep a tab on everything. So you really do need to have like a community of people that you trust, online or in person, or a combination. And you have to kind of outsource some of your researching to some people. It's just a fact. You can't check it all yourself. You've got to like go, okay, this guy's been right about enough things in this area before. I'm just gonna not trust them, but I'm gonna listen to them, because otherwise you spin your wheels. We don't have enough time for everyone to make each mistake once. We need to learn from other people's mistakes.
Well said. Yeah. And if you go back in my Facebook and my Instagram, I think I have up a lot of the posts, or most of them, from my vegan days, from when I was promoting coconut almond yogurt, or my YouTube channel. You can go back and laugh at my old videos where I had long hair, and I was, I sounded like I was high. I wasn't. I was vegan high. I was just kind of brain damaged, and just like, hey, dude, like, here's some coconut almond yogurt, Yeah. So you can kind of see my journey, and I think that kind of builds some trust with people, because I'm very transparent about where I've been. And I think, like I said, fruitarian is kind of better, but it's not. I mean, you still need that protein. Like fruitarian with some bone broth and gelatin, maybe. But other than that, it's like just animal foods, animal nutrition, and you don't have to supplement as much.
Yeah, and I think it's good that you've got that stuff, old content on your YouTube, because I hear a lot of people, because this is the new big thing, a biohacking podcast. This is the new big thing, a health YouTube channel. Buy my stuff, use my affiliate links, money. And all these people starting off, I've been in the industry for 10 years. I've been here for 15 years. I've been this. And it's like, I have been involved in this to differing degrees, different levels. I don't really talk too much about my personal stuff on here, and that might change in the future. But with you, it's very clear. Like, you just go YouTube oldest, and you see, okay, this guy's been like talking about this sort of stuff for like, I think the oldest video is like 2012 or 13, or I don't know. It's like 14, 15, something like that. It's really old. And so you've actually got some evidence, you're not just new guy jumping on the scene with the affiliate links and the Shopify account or whatever it is.
I appreciate that. Yeah. I think one of my first YouTube videos, and it was scary. I think I had my iPhone. I was in my parents' bathroom, and this is when I was into enemas. And so I told my mom, like, hey, I'm going to record a video. I made the coffee in the kitchen. I'm like, can you please be quiet? And, recorded it. I went in the bathroom and I did like an enema, and I didn't show it, but I just lied there on the floor and I'm like this with the camera above my face and just talking while I'm holding the coffee. It was kind of crazy thinking back, but I did an enema a day for like 6 months. I've done so many wild experiments, and I've seen people get addicted to those. And it's funny, people that are just getting into alternative health, I don't think they know how many different rabbit holes there are to get locked in. And if you just go in the colon cleansing one, there goes 2 years of your life or whatever, or you can just watch me and say, like, don't do enemas. They're harsh. You don't need to do them. Just eat a raw carrot every day. Soak it if you're worried about the carotenoids, if you're in a disease state. And it doesn't have to be crazy. You don't have to like shoot water up there.
Yeah. That's such a good point. There is so many different rabbit holes and so much potential for wasted time, wasted money, wasted energy. Like, we should wrap it up, but like the yoga is another one, like that, I'm going to be speaking out a lot about that. I wasted probably maybe $500,000 New Zealand on that in 2013. And, a lot of people, they've invested huge amounts of money traveling to the Thailand to get their instructor course and probably getting mortgages to pay for their studio. And it's like, it's all for something which is ineffective, not only ineffective, like dangerous. And you've recently shared, there's the Steve Bankar's guy. He like, there's just information. It's all coming out like left and right. There's the physical component to it, which I've mainly focused on, and Steven's got his video on that. And there's so much potential to waste your time and money. That's one of my messages, is like, be really careful and just stick to what is more obvious and clear to be right. But yeah, and you do that as well, which is good.
Yeah, well said. And there will definitely be stubborn people that have to learn by failure, before they listen to, because I could be abrasive.
Yeah.
I can be abrasive in the way that I share my message, and kind of like nowadays functional patterns or whatever. But if you can get past the personality and just actually get the information that's there, then that shows a kind of emotional maturity. It's not really having thick skin. It's just not being brain damaged, where you're not in this PC kind of mindset of being easily offended. Because I think that's a sign of suboptimal brain. And so it's like being able to just logically take in information.
Yeah, and just be calm and listen to something that's an opposing viewpoint and assess it, merits, demerits, pros, cons. Well, anyway, Matt, this has been awesome. We'll probably do a round 2 at some point in the future. So thanks for this.
I'd love to. Yeah, thanks so much for having me on the show. That was fun.
Well, there you go, friends. That was Matt Blackburn. Really good to have him on to discuss the Clf Protocol and those other topics. And like I said in the introduction, Matt's someone who shares a lot of good information on different aspects of health. So definitely worth checking out his Instagram page and his YouTube channel as well, and taking a look at some of the information there. I think I first found his content, I was watching a magnesium video of his in the middle of 2017, and I've been subscribed ever since because I get value from the information he puts out. Now, if you're interested in purchasing any of Matt's Mitolife products, then you can use the discount code GROWSANCTUARY, which is in all capital letters, no space. Use that discount code and you'll get 15% off, I think. It's a good way to save a bit of money if you're interested in checking out any of his products. And if you'd like to see more of my content, you can look up Grow Sanctuary on Instagram, Grow Sanctuary on YouTube, and BitChute. This podcast is obviously at this point in time available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and hopefully more platforms in the future. And I've also got a website, growsanctuary.com, which has a newsletter, which you can sign up for if you're interested. And also on the website, there is a recommended resources page where I share products that I think are worth looking into, that are good, products that I use, and also organizations that I think are worth supporting and potentially joining. So yeah, if you're interested in that, then check out the recommended resources page on my website. I think that's everything. Hope you enjoyed the podcast and have a great week.